And we're back. I think we're back, right? We're good. Hello, everyone. I'm Crusader Jackaran. Guest star today is Evedalion again. And we also have the Benefactor. And today we're going to talk about XP. So let's go around and see what methods we all prefer. Eve, let's start with you. What's your preferred method of XP?
Currently right now I do a mixture of both milestone leveling and EXP. That is my preferred use of EXP right now,
All right.
or experience. And
I just got done like making fun of him backstage before the stream about him saying EXP, and it's like just be normal. Say XP. Be normal. Benefactor, what's your preferred method?
Experience points, but that also comes from my just long-standing RPG background. I feel so. Just experience points. Here you go. Here's a
All right,
bowl of experience points.
all right, and yeah, I think I would say my preferred is probably experience points too. Just let people gain XP as they do stuff. Um, so I would say that would then say, well, what options are there for XP? For giving your players XP. We have experience points, what we just mentioned. Milestone is another. Are there any other systems that that we're missing here?
no, I think most of them use like a numerical value to advance players.
I think this is just me spitballing and shooting from the hip. I think Milestone is sort of like a conjuration from the Theater of the Mind era, where it's like you don't have pen and paper, right? So you're sort of like, well, how do you determine if someone levels up? Well, in Theater of the Mind, it's like, okay, your character's doing all this heroic stuff, and you're like, hey, you managed to successfully scale the dragon and cut its head off. So that would naturally earn you a reward of leveling up because you're now experienced in slaying dragons. What do you guys think about that? Does that seem like a logical sound?
No, I think milestone is something very recent. So I mean, because it's always been XP, even from the old day. That whole thing with XP, the various race/classes had different experience point values. That's even why RPGs have experience points, because they're old school. Then Dragons always been experience points. Experience point system. I believe milestone is something very very recent.
How recent would you call recent?
Uh, I think it might be from third edition.
That's still not recent in my opinion.
Yeah,
Well,
I
you
wouldn't
talk
say
about through
that.
the if you talk about through the whole of like OD&D to AD&D to AD&D second edition.
Well, that still
You
matters
know,
because that's sometimes decades worth of like, playtime for people. So I
Yeah, I was gonna say I know of people who their leveling method was essentially a milestone. I don't know if they called it milestone, but it was basically, I guess you could say it's like a merit system where, again, you cut the head of the dragon off, therefore you get the experience, or you're the one who levels up, and it's from the a basis, as I just said, it's they didn't have pen and paper, it's theater of the mind. So you award someone a level up or something of that nature, or XP, based on a feat of strength or an activity that was done. So okay, you helped the widow bury her deceased husband, and that technically ends the quest. Now you get awarded the XP, you know, and they say, oh, you just go up a level,
for
you know.
me, I feel like for the benefactor, I think you more want to say like more current, than recent, because like I feel like recent is there's too much.
modern,
It's
fine, modern. We'll go. It's a more modern thing that
more
started,
modern.
I believe,
Okay,
around third edition.
I'll agree with that. More modern. I personally think there isn't anything inherently wrong with milestone leveling. I feel like it depends on how it's implemented, because it could be used as a way of gatekeeping players if they don't achieve the milestone that the DM has set. Like if they set a specific event that the players had to go through, or an event that they had to, deal with, and if they don't do it at all, like let's say they veer off course, or avoid this event, well, they don't get any level ups, because that was supposed to be the thing that was going to give them the level up or increase their players' power. And I feel like that is a very poor way of doing it, because it leads into like railroading. If the players don't do a particular thing, if they don't go to particular places and don't do a specific set of actions, then they don't get level ups or experience. And I feel like that's a poor way of using milestone.
Yeah, that's a part of my thing with milestone, and I knew we were going to get to that point at some point with our gripes with the various XP systems. I would say probably my biggest gripe with XP in general, and this is a problem I see a lot of DMs have, is giving XP to their players at all. So I see milestone as like a lot of players or DMs method of like, I don't want to think about XP. I don't care about XP. I can't figure out how to calculate it, or it's too much work to figure it out. And it's like, to me, it's like, all right, so simplify it. But giving XP is part of what incentivizes people to do stuff and interact with the game. So if you're doing milestone, in my opinion, if you're doing milestone, there really isn't an incentive for the players to do anything. They're going to come at it with the mentality or idea of, okay, this is basically a video game. I could see people making the argument the other way on it, where it's like, well, no, it's all the incentive to keep moving forward. But I come from a World of Warcraft era. I come from a MMORPG background, where it doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't matter everything that happens in between the grind. That doesn't matter. What matters is getting to min-max. It's getting to the end so that you can do the other stuff. So that's probably where I break from tradition with Dungeons and Dragons, is that, I come at it with an MMORPG product of my era type of deal. So, with milestone and such, it's like, no, the objective is to level up, so to get stronger so I can do more stuff. So I don't care about anything else. My objective is to get that XP. So that's sort of my part of my criticism of a milestone personally.
I feel like milestone comes from like a story perspective. When people try to implement milestone, it's like they're trying to tell a story rather than trying to run a game in itself. So it's like they have these specific events in place that they want the players to do, like indefinitely. Like they have to go here, they have to do this, like almost like a traditional RPG. Like there's a linearity to it. Like they have to go through these steps in order to reach this point, and once you reach the intervals, you get the quote unquote experience, and or the milestone in this. And that people who understand that would catch on, and I guess that would be kind of the essence of, is like to experience the story in that way. But I still find that very poor way to do things. I feel like if you're trying to write a story the play is supposed to play in, I feel like at that point just write a book.
Well, that's where I would go into Cypher. Okay, and that's why I'm a big proponent of Cypher, and it's something I note. You make a good point where it's like, all right, people are probably trying to tell a story with milestone, and that might be, as I said before, I think that might be why it was a good thing, or a thing. I don't want to say a good thing, but a thing with XP. But like I said, in the past, I mean, the game that Benefactor and I just got out of that was, we call it the Thursday game. Okay, when we got out of that game, all right, the DM was like, I do milestone. And not to jump on any criticism of it, but you observe how he designed his dungeons, how he designed all of the things that he was doing with the game. his concept for boss fights. In my opinion, it's lazy. And so I saw it as his entire philosophy of XP was like, okay, I'm going to do milestone because I don't have to think about it. I can just give these guys an arbitrary amount of XP and that'll be good enough. And that way, I think it's a good thing because my players won't be chasing XP. And in my experience as a DM, my players don't chase XP. I don't know of any players who chase XP. It's like, oh, I'm going to do this just to get the XP. They chase interactivity. They chase being able to do everything and be epic and be heroic and do what they think is their character's personality. You know, they do it for, hey, I want to show off to my friends later on and tell them this awesome story about how cool I was in this game. That's what I see players chasing. Personally.
So you've never had a player whose sole purpose is to get stronger?
Not necessarily like that, no.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that, and because of that, they want to get more abilities. They want to get more, in a sense, levels in their character so they can get more spells or more attacks. You know, they want to be able to do
I
more.
had one player like that in Cypher, and he told me outright, he's like, I'm trying to min-max. And he was struggling with Cypher on that because, like, in Cypher, any ability can be pretty much anything or used by anyone. And so he's trying to, like, get these abilities that he perceives as, like, they're min-maxed and they're going to be epic and all these great things. And it's like that system doesn't really work with that mentality. Like, you can't min-max in Cypher. Not technically you can't. But you know, he had told me outright that he was just trying to hoard his XP so he could level up as quick as possible. And that way, from his perspective, he would have more options available to him. So, like, he was the only one who did that. But, you know, that only helped him so much. You know, that only helped because, like, even he realized it. He's like watching the other players. They're doing stuff that he couldn't do. Regardless of how many levels he was ahead of everyone. In Cypher, there's only 6 levels. Okay. So he's at like level 4 or 5, and they're at like level 2. And they're still doing the stuff that he can do. And it's like there is no real difference. So, like, sure, I have had a player who chased the level system or chased, you know, leveling up as soon as possible. But he, you know, from my experience as a DM, it's like he didn't really get that far ahead of everyone else. And I didn't see that much of a difference between the two.
What about you, Benefactor?
I don't recall having any players that really made it their thing about just wanting to level up and get stronger. I've had it where players look forward to a lot on the next thing they may get or something, or especially because I had did a lot of homebrew for like talent systems, or even the game that I'm making now, where some people are looking forward to see what their next ability is like for them to play with, but never anyone who's like core focus. Even if it's their characters thing, they never really just focus on like the pure hunt of XP. You know, right now, you know, some players are talking. We've talked. I explained how the XP system works and why, you know, we'll talk about not getting a lot from the enemies they're facing. But and this goes back into like very old school RPGs. I explained them, you know, if you're fighting enemies that are weaker than you, of course they're not going to give you enough for you to go forward. You have to go and kind of find those encounters or fights that are much more closer to you. Now this is me for that game. Dungeons and Dragons a little bit different. You know, because I understood where, even though I wasn't doing milestone, I understood like when you guys did maybe like a dungeon crawl or an event, how much XP that's gonna give, or around how much it's gonna give you guys. So I feel like there no one really thought about it too much, and nobody really was just like, oh, I can't wait to level, I can't help them grind that XP, you know, type of thing. So you know, I want to note too is which goes a little bit into it. Is sometimes too, you know, there's nothing wrong with looking forward to the level up. I think that's something that XP gives the players, is that looking forward to the level up. more than they can see how close they are to the next level up than just being than the spontaneous level up and they're like, oh shoot, sometimes that excitement. I know for me at times that excitement of how close I am is like, oh, I'm only 1,500 away, can't wait, is a big thing for people as well.
But it can also have the adverse effect that some people feel
Oh
cocked.
no, yeah, there's always a pro, there is a con. I'm not saying there is not. So you are 100% right on that. Uh Like I said, that's a pro and that's a con to the XP system. It's both a boon and a blessing where you're like, oh, I'm 1,500 away, or I'm 1,500 away. That the whole thing with leveling up and leveling systems and things like that is always just based on personality of people. Because some people are going to be not really caring that XP, like with Jackaran said, not really caring too much about it, or they're gonna be there just like, I want to get all those levels in and really be real hound on it, and their whole thing is focusing on leveling and getting all these abilities more than the journey that they're going on, in which they increase those abilities over the time naturally. When I play, I like looking and being like, oh yeah, I'm like 1,500 XP away, but I don't hound on it. I'll make like that quick comment like I did for your Starfinder campaign. I'm like, oh, are you serious? 1,500 away. Looking forward to the next level. But when I come to play RPG, Dungeon Drag Tabletop, I come for the play. I came for the game. I come for what we're doing in the world and stuff that we're in. The XP, the leveling, those things will come. If you're really that hard focused on just leveling and powering up, I sometimes personally think it's just like, then go play an RPG, go play a regular game, and where you can be a lot more in full totality control, where you just go around and just grind up levels. You know what
But
I mean?
with a traditional EXP system, you can do that though in D&D. You can literally go around in the wilds, and if the DM allows it, have encounter to encounter to fight monsters and get experience points in that way. If you're going by, the book and the
Well,
monsters that
yeah.
you fight, you can do that in D&D. But do you feel like Milestone would erase that feeling of the pros and cons of the 1,500 away and 1,500 away? Do you think?
I think it will give its own pros and cons with
Okay.
Milestone, because it'll be like you never know when you're gonna level up. That's something like, they could level up in like 2 months and be like, I still haven't leveled up. We still level. We sometimes may go into a worry of, did we miss something? Again, this is where you talk about how it also depends on how a person do the milestone. They be like, crap, did we miss something that would have gave us a level up from that we reached? Did we miss the wrong turn and just go this way? So that can lead to its own kind of question and anxiety, and that's just one part of a con to me when thinking about milestone. You know what I mean? Is if you don't level up after a certain amount of time, you're just like, did we do something wrong? Miss something? You have that big worry because you don't know when that next level. You don't have a visible sign of when that next level up is. But the pro to that too is also getting it flipping on the personality. Maybe it's not worry about. Maybe people are enjoying the game state and it's not. They don't that this saves them having to jot down and remember all the EXP they gained. They have to keep calculating, right. The people that are playing, they could just be like, okay, we're just trotting along the journey, having fun together, saving villagers or killing these things, or talking to merchants. It won't be on their mind. They have to keep of something to keep track of. That's one less thing for them to keep track of. That is a very big pro of Milestone, where you don't have like XP confusion of, oh crap, I've got to write down the XP I got for this or add it. There's pros and cons to
Yeah,
both.
did you remember to add the XP for me finding that legendary item? Like, did you
You
remember
know,
to add the XP for me finding that secret door?
the reason why I asked Benefactor is because of a statement that you made before about how you personally go into the game wanting to experience the actual game itself to play. You're not really focused on the experience point system. Like, it's there and you like the feeling of, oh, I'm close to leveling, but like you said, you don't try to harp on that particular fact. So would it milestone also be good to facilitate for you, because you don't have to also worry about, you can strictly focus on just playing the game, and as you play the game and experience the game and you reach whatever the designated milestone is, you will get that level up, right? And since it's not that focus, would you say that you wouldn't mind doing or participating in milestone if it's done well enough?
Yeah, no, well, and this goes to me as a player. I don't particularly harp on the level up stuff too much. Even though I'm a guy that like builds their character straight out, it's just, again, that's for me personally. I will be fine with doing milestone. I'm fine with doing milestone or experience, because again, to me, that's not necessarily why I came to do this. You know what I mean? So I definitely would be okay with milestone. I wouldn't even really be thinking about it. I may still be thinking about, oh, right, whenever we level up, I get this ability, but I would never really just think about need to level up, want to level up. Because it's
So
like
it's basically
I
a
don't see
byproduct.
what's the it's basically a byproduct. I don't see why even my own plays, it confused me a bit. I understand from being a player, but it's confusing me with the whole worrying about leveling up and everything. Like, you know, to me, it's one of those things where it's just like I don't I didn't really want that to make it be the thing that you really are like here for. You know, I want everyone to come here, experience the role play, have fun, you know, in the game world and being in a different world, having the feeling of being in a different world. You know, like I said, I do understand. That's why I don't like be like, oh, why are you worrying about it or anything like that. You know, I talk to them and explain, you know, how the XP system works and stuff. Both for the game I'm making, and I was the same for Scion, where it was just how I did XP very similar to Jackaran. I like the way he did it. It made a lot more sense in that fashion. But you know, that's just me. That's my personality as a player. You always have a different spectrum of players, and I advise DMs to be wary of that. You may have one player that is just like, oh, XP. Yeah, I don't really care. You know, and you may have that one guy that's just like, oh, we only got that much? Come on, man. Like, so close. You know, you're going to have those variances even at your table. And especially the more plays you have, the more variance you're going to have of their worry or care. But same time, we can go into gear with the same thing, like drops and stuff. But that, I think, would be a whole topic for another discussion.
I had a player whose sole focus was to basically gain levels. And the reason behind that player is because I made a homebrew classes for the particular campaign using Pathfinder classes as a base. And this player was so excited about the abilities, like overly excited that all they care about is getting their next ability to see how it plays out and how it functions. While me personally, I was excited. The fact that they were excited or for the homebrew editions that I added, it overall wasn't a healthy thing because all their decision making and actions were basically trying to get the most EXP, as possible.
Oh, thank you. I thought we were talking about, sorry, I thought we were talking about me for a second. I'm like, wait. And
No,
then when
no,
you
no, no,
start
no,
going
no, no,
further,
no,
I'm
no,
like, okay, that's not me.
no,
When
no,
you
no, no,
started
no, no, no,
talking,
no,
I'm like,
no.
okay.
That's what I said. I said overly excited. You don't get you get excited, especially if you've seen a foreseeable combo or you enter in a specific situation where your upcoming ability could have been used in that situation, and you then it'd be like, oh man, if I had this ability that I'm about to have, I could have used it in this situation, and that kind of gives you excitement. But I'm talking about like over excitement to the point where like nothing else mattered other than trying to level up to get new abilities. It was part of the campaign that I called Final Destiny, but it wasn't the one that you played. It was part two
Part two,
with
yeah.
a separate set of people. And it was just one person. It wasn't like it was the whole table. It was just one person. And in that particular game, I was using that particular campaign. I use milestone leveling because of how uh, the game in itself functions. I could go into detail about it if you guys want.
I would say sure, but I want to hold on that. Um, this player chasing XP. Now I'm sort of like, all right, so he's chasing XP. He's trying to make decisions based on that. Um, yeah, if I were in that circumstance, and I want to say I did say that with my Cypher guy. I was like, you can calm down. Like you don't need to chase XP, and tying it into something that Benefactor had just said a moment ago, which was you never know when you're going to level up. Again, this is one of the things I liked about Cypher. Cypher, you could consistently project when you were going to level up. Like at least how I did it, I gave it so that XP was consistent, but the rule book says to the dungeon master. It says, generally every game, your player should be making about 1 to 4 XP every game. You know, based on just interacting, dice rolls, and everything. They should get about 4 XP every game. And in my experience, yeah, it turned out that way. And I didn't really have to manage it. It just happened. So, you know, just by them rolling things, you know, I say, give me a roll, GM intrusion. Okay. They get an XP. They also give someone else an XP. You know, and it's just, it for whatever reason, it just naturally rolls out. So the players were able to calculate and say, because the XP system in Cypher is simple, you know, only 16 XP to level up entirely, but every 4 XP is an advancement towards your next level up. So, you know, leveling up isn't that big of a deal. Like when you level up in Cypher, you basically just get access to new abilities. But as you're progressing towards that level up, every time you spend 4 XP, you're getting another piece. Like you spend 4 XP to gain hit points. Well, that you would get when you level up. But in Cypher, you get it just immediately for spending 4 XP to advance forward. And then it's like, okay, you get, you could spend 4 XP to gain a new ability that you're getting as you go forward towards your next level up. So, you know, like the levels in Cypher are basically just like these gates that say, until you have all of these keys in place, you can't access anything past here. But once you get that gate, or once you unlock that gate, you can now grab things from that tier. And you can grab those items, or not items, you can grab those spells, those powers, those abilities as you continue to unlock the gates. But you can also still access those abilities just by spending XP and not leveling at all. Like you don't have to level. You can just say, hey, I spend 4 XP, I'm going to use this ability. Or I'm going to spend 2 XP. I think it's actually 2 XP you spend. It's
Well,
1 to try, 2 to succeed.
It sounds like Cypher allows you to customize your player's power in that regard.
It does. It does. They tell you one of the things you can do in Cypher is say I am a wizard and I would love, like this moment I'm fighting. All right, I'm in a moment. It'd be really nice to have fire. Well, I'm a wizard, so I would have fireball. Let's say I would really like to have a cleric heal, like their biggest AOE heal, right? Like a mass healing word. I can spend XP to then cast mass healing word. And I point to the DM, here it is in the book. This is what it does. I want to do this. Okay, spend the XP. And if I spend 1 XP, I get to roll. If I spend 2 XP, I automatically succeed. So if this is a heal that my team needs, it has to happen. I can choose to take the easy way, roll roll a die. And if it's a nat 1, it's a GM intrusion, meaning it could go wrong, it could go good. If it's a nat 20, then I can make it do something fantastical. I can make its AOE larger. I could say that not only does it heal my allies, but it makes them all have a damage shield, or it makes them all feel a lot better morally. You know, like they're not morally, mentally. They feel a lot stronger mentally. So they might have been troubled by their sister dying. They might have been troubled by or fearful of their parents being left at home alone. Well, I'm making it so I'm powering this spell so that it does something alleviating to them. And it gets their head in the game. It gets their head in the fight. You know, that's part of the cool crafting system of spells and abilities. Now, say I'm not a wizard. Say I am a mechanic. Okay, it's a modern game. It's in the real world. And we're in a street fight. But I still want to cast mass healing word. Okay, so what do I do in that case? Well, because it's a modern world and there is no magic, I can say my guy is going to just start cheering. And he's going to cheer for my guys to kick some ass. You know, like doing like a like a hype man routine. And I roll, I heal, it does the healing effect. Okay, so like game mechanic wise, it does a healing effect. But story narrative wise, my guy is just hooping and hollering, cheering on my people, and that gives them a morale boost. That makes them feel good. It's like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to kick this guy's butt.
Well, what it sounds like is that Cypher doesn't equate your level to your indicative strength.
Yep.
While other systems predominantly do. Like your level is your objective overall effectiveness. Whether you build your character is a whole different story, but your level is supposed to be like, this is how strong you are, and as you gain more of it, you will be stronger than how you previously were. And I feel like that's in a way it's gatekeeping in a sense, in terms of strength, right? Like you will only get stronger once you level up. While it sounds like in Cypher, I don't need to spend experience points to level up. I can spend experience points to get various other things where my level is just like, oh, I have access to more things now, but I could still have spend it in various different ways, if that's what I'm getting at from Cypher.
Yeah. That's effectively it. You know, and there's they have stats. You know, they have stats that you can die and such like that, and different abilities and powers. It's called Cypher because you get these ciphers that you can apply them to a circumstance or situation. And the idea, this is a part that I fail at with Cypher personally, is the idea is you're supposed to cycle through the ciphers. Like the ciphers are supposed to be your loot drops. So you're supposed to run through them and use them often. And in using them often, you're supposed to receive loot of them often. And for the game that I was running, I really wasn't good at doing that. Like I wasn't good at giving my players items that they could, or ciphers that they could just burn through and get for another one. My players hoarded their ciphers. They're like, these things are fucking treasures. Don't lose them. So with that all in mind, we talked about what's our preferred method. What do we think are the best methods of what have you? Do you guys have a method for choosing which XP method you're going to use? I mean, I know Eve, you switch between two different systems, right? Like you said, you like a little bit of milestone, but you also like a little bit of XP gain. Is he there? Are you there, Eve?
Yes.
Yeah. So could you elaborate on what you were just saying about how you like a little bit of XP gain, but you also like milestone?
Yeah. Through my journey as a DM, I've tried various different experience points methods, and it boils down to what the Benefactor was saying before, was like knowing your play group and what works for them. So when it came to deciding of what I personally want to do with the stories that I'm telling now, I've done a mix of both experience points and milestone leveling, but the players don't know it's milestone leveling the way I integrate it into it, because I still give them EXP that would make them level because they reached the milestone. So like they physically see the EXP, but it's because they did the milestone. They reached the milestone, but they get the EXP because they reached the milestone. That's how I implement it for the current game that I'm doing. The first one that I ever did was strictly milestone, which was called Final Destiny, and it was based off of what I call a memory system. So the story behind it was the players were in the bodies of their past lives, and it was a fantasy setting. So they were present day people like us in normal with cars, planes, and whatnot, and they were slung into a past where magic and monsters existed, and they're inhabiting the bodies of their past lives. Now, because they still have the mind of their present day selves, but in the body of their past lives, they have all the physical capabilities and attributes, but with none of the physical training and the memories, and that would explain their being level quote unquote 1. And as they would acquire memories of their past lives and experience the training and going through the world itself, they would reach certain milestones, and then they would get a memory. That memory would unlock powers for them, and that was their milestone. So every time they got a unique memory, that was their level up. And I made sure to divvy it out evenly among the players based off their experience, and because it was a memory thing, it got them to experience more of their own story that they wrote through their own character's lens, because their characters have to then take in the knowledge of their past life, because they were two separate entities. Their past life had their whole past and events that are set, and they had their separate lives in the present day, and they had to learn about their past life to integrate into the world to find out how they got here, why they're in someone else's body, and figure it out that way. Then I went to a different campaign, which can't remember the name of it, but it was strictly by the books EXP. Like, I took every monster that they engaged, and I looked at the EXP that on the book, and I tallied it up after each encounter that they had, and then gave them out that way. I feel like in that particular playgroup, they didn't like it as much. Some of the players were from the original Final Destiny, so they got to experience that type of leveling. And I don't know if it was because of the story elements that incentivized that leveling that they enjoyed more than just the flat I kill things, get experience points. Benefactor, you were part of that game. That was the one with the ley lines, with where you was playing Chrome
yeah,
Jailer.
yeah. Our first ever Dungeons and Dragons, actually, for
Yeah,
one.
Yeah, Chrome Jailer. You were part of that one, Benefactor. So that one was by the books EXP. Like, anytime they got into a fight, it was EXP. And I don't know if some of them enjoyed that or not. We didn't really discuss that because they were focused on more on the story
we
element.
got Niraj in the chat here. Can you see that what he posted, Eve? I put it up on.
Yes.
Okay. Could you? He says milestone sounds like it could be antithetical to character growth as well. Certain milestones could be in conflict with the character's motivation and character. Could you respond to that? Once you have more experience than I think Benefactor and I combined with milestone.
Well, it'll only be antithetical to the character's growth if you have not considered what the character is trying to achieve or going towards. You as the DM are setting the events in question, right? So that means you are setting the milestones. If, for example, if a player is trying to create a criminal syndicate, and their thing is, I want to create like this big network of criminal underground activity, and this character goes about the next city that they go, try to usurp the crime lord of that particular town, right? And he does it. He's successful. He usurps it, and he becomes the boss of that small little town, and now he wants to branch out. That's a milestone for that character. That's one step towards what he wanted to do, and that might change his personality based on how the player wants to play that out role play wise. I can't determine or dictate how they're going to role play the interactions that they interact. I can only facilitate after they've made certain choices and whatnot. I feel like if you're going to do milestone leveling, it should always be in the nature of what characters are trying to do. And for me, as I was talking with the Benefactor, it benefits more when you're doing an adventure style play style, when each person has their own unique goals that they're trying to achieve, and as they achieve them, those are milestones. You may not consider that as worthy of level up sometimes or think, but in my mind, the way I do it is that's experience that they are gaining. They are doing things. It doesn't always have to be combat, but they are doing things to create something for themselves, and they should be rewarded as such. And one of the rewards can also be a level up. It doesn't always have to be. It can be, that they do get the criminal syndicate, and that's it. And it's not until they get more stuff would you want to give.
So you're saying, like, instead of a level up, you could give them like 500 XP.
Yeah. I'm saying it's just how you implement the milestones, what's important. So in Niraj's example, it can be adverse to the character's goals and to their character growth and development, but only if you are actively going out of way to create things that are not going to create character growth. Because in the end of the day, the person who's playing the character controls the character. I can't make them have character growth. I've had this with one of my characters who, in the Final Destiny Part 2 campaign, who was playing a really dickish and asshole character. And he would do things which would actively piss off the in-game characters and ostracize them. And then cry that no one wants to help him and no one wants to, be his friend, and everyone hates him when he's actively pushing them away. He had all the opportunities to have specific events that had affected him, make his character grow, but he chose not to because that's how he is role playing the character. I can't control that.
Okay. Well, it's interesting hearing you describe it that way because it's very involved the way you're describing it. Because I'm looking at, like, in my Star Wars game, if I were to go down this road of having milestones for each character, oh boy, that'd be fun. And not in a good way for me. It would be very, very, very annoying. Because everyone, you learn this as a DM, you learn that everyone has their own motivations. They have their own goals. And trying to manage and steer all of their goals is a pain in the ass unto itself. Whereas if you have it where it's like, okay, here's the story, or here's a mission that you guys can go on. Go ahead and free roam, be a bunch of headless chickens all you want. Okay, open world sandbox. And as they interact and do things, that's what gets them to gain XP. In my opinion, that's how I prefer it. It's a lot easier. Now, I was gonna say it's a lot easier doing it that way. It also, to me, is a more encouraging of role play. It's more encouraging of the players having their own growth and experiences. They get to play their characters genuinely.
I disagree with that. I don't think so, because you're creating these homogenized experiences that they're all experiencing all together. They don't have any personal things that are relating to them personally. I'm not saying that every single thing has to cater to one person and then you have to have multiple things for other people, but as we discussed in terms of character creation before, is that players should come in a game with having their own personal goal. It doesn't always have to be some grandiose thing, and you should be trying to facilitate that. That should be the role play incentive, to facilitate whatever personal goal that you're playing this game for. If you're just like, I'm playing this game to experience the story, and you're just like, I'm just going to throw story at you, to me, that homogenized experience doesn't allow a lot of room for personal growth. It will have personal growth, but doesn't have as much personal growth, in my opinion, as something that is tailored for that particular person.
Well, that's I think there's probably some truth to what you're saying, because I mean, with my game, well, let me put it like this, okay?
Well, the best thing I'd say is that you like Darth Vader, right? Imagine if everyone went through the Darth Vader experience. Then what would make Darth Vader unique?
Correct. Yes.
It's his personal things that he personally go through that creates the character, his persona, his personality, the way he thinks, the way he acts, the experience that he himself went through. But if he had a squad that were all going through the same shit that he was, he may be able to process it differently because he has multiple people going through the same thing, as him. He may not address the situation in the same way because 3 other people are going through the same thing with him. He wouldn't have this personal stake and, personal effect on him, which, translates to the decisions that he makes after.
Right. And I that's what I'm saying. Like, I can see what your point is. And I see that in my players where they don't like breaking apart. They don't like splitting up. They don't like experiencing their own things. But on the other hand, no one made my one player. No one. I didn't do this. No one made this guy decide, I'm going to get a gun. I'm going to hollow it out, and I'm going to convert it into a toy laser pistol to play laser tag. And then I'm going to give that to the ship's kid. Like, that was not a quest. That was not something I did. I had no intention. This player decided that that was something his character would do because he's just that type of guy. The same player, the same character, said that when this random guy, engineer, who was like, hey, I'll paint your ship for you, okay, when this guy died, he got shot during a shootout, a street fight, okay, This player decided, I want to find out more about that man. I want to contact his family and let them know how he died. He took that upon himself to do that. And I have other players who every single round, I do a spot check. 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 And there is no growth. I have no idea what their aspirations are. I have no idea what they're even doing. And so I have these two different players in the same exact game. And I allow, like, the first guy, he gets a lot of XP because he makes the most of his experience playing the character. He has an idea for his character. He has direction. The later guy, he gets like barely any XP. Now, he doesn't really complain. So, I mean, that I'm glad he doesn't do that. But it's like you're getting out of it what you put into it. If you want your character to experience these things and you want your character to have these goals and these agendas, we have this guy right now who's a droid. His objective is to find a way of regenerating his hull, his armor. And he's going through this whole biological process. And I don't know what he's going for, but he's going down this road of he's trying to have a regenerating droid. And it's like, okay, wherever that leads him. Now, if the player includes me in on the process, I can then help facilitate that journey. I can help facilitate that experience. But if they don't include me, then I can't really help them. And that's what this droid guy is sort of finding out. He's instead of going to the DM, he is now learning to go to the other players and use their knowledge and their character's insight and their character's experience. But the other thing I was going to say, to your point, and Benefactor here has firsthand experience of it in several of my games. The players don't eat or drink; they just survive off of sunlight or something. And again, in my system, I encourage players to be interactive. I encourage them to do things, but if they don't feel the need to do them, the main thing I look for is role play. So I focus the players on role play, and then everything else to me falls in place. All of that just falls into place once they grasp role playing. Everything else just happens.
Well, I want to comment on this. This is also based on the expectations that you give to your players. You have to set what the expectations for the campaign is, because you could have it where the way for them they feel how the campaign is, they're not really allowed to separate from the others, even for a modicum of time, because this is the mission that they're on, the journey they're on. If you set the precedent, that no, the campaign is for you all individually to achieve the goals that you set out for, and you're just so happen to do it together as a group, you will have a different set of experiences from your players. So that's something that why it was like a session 0 is
That's a good
setting
point.
expectations with your players. Or it can always come to a time where you can have a feeling, because like truthfully with the end time thing, which I made known to you, which is like I'm tired of being on the ship. I'm kind of like just stuck on the ship. Not even like just because of the cabin things. Like I just feel like stuck on this ship, and we're moving on this like predetermined line. It's like I can't really get fully everything I want to really get done while being stuck on the ship with these people. And I don't feel like I'm experiencing character growth, but not necessarily the character growth or the objective that I was hoping for. Now, luckily, one because I was captain, when we ran into L's, I can bring the L's on this ship. But there's nothing stopping saying one of the other players being the captain of the ship, and I try to bring the L's and get what I want my character set done to be able to get done. They'd be like, no, and it's just like, oh, well, crap, now what do I do? Because I'm kind of like stuck on this shit with them, and I'm not allowed to bring and say. So it's a lot of those things where it could be how the campaign is and how you have the campaign going as a setting and a story where you're making it possible for a player to actually achieve their own personal goals. And I think that's where the large divide is really going to come between you guys for the XP and milestone is. When Jackaran creates campaigns, he's creating a story game world that the players are in, where usually for sorry, Eve trying to, yeah, I got it every time. I know. You know, he most of the time is creating a world where your character has a goal, and while going to achieve that goal, which I also do, is that is, you know, there's stuff going on while you're trying to, oh, you're trying to start a criminal organization. Well, that's happening. The queen of the country trying to start a criminal organization and is squashing various rebellions going on, you know, and some of the people that you're trying to recruit may be part of that rebellion, or she may see you starting that criminal organization as being part of that rebellion. So it's also the various things you're making as the game world and the expectations you're giving your players that will really denote that kind of thing. And that also should decide how you want to do level up for your player characters between XP and milestone is part of that expectation of what you want from them.
That makes sense, because in the Final Destiny campaign, it wasn't, in a sense, a group oriented campaign. It started off with the players legitimately scattered across the continent, and they knew each other in their present life as friends. So in essence, if they wanted to adventure, they would have to find each other across the continent. But by traversing and traveling, they would encounter various different things, which allowed me to facilitate more personal, tailored journeys and events that happened for them, which I guess would make it easier for me to implement milestone leveling in that regard because of that.
And to go on what Jackaran said with the guy on the ship and the gun, I don't really consider that is doing something with a bit of intervalley, but I don't consider that the same as going and doing something as a part of your character's overarching goal. He did something that he thought would be nice to do for the kid on the ship, but that's not to say that's his goal in life and that's what he's living his life for. You know, it'd be a different story if it was just like, I want to go and they're going to go fight the Empire. I don't want to do that. You know what I'm saying? They decided, the rest of the group decided they want to fight the Empire, but my whole goal isn't to fight the Empire. My goal is, my goal is to go and maybe join the Empire or something. I couldn't really think off the top of my head. You know, but
your goal is to breed Kadu. You want to breed you want a farm full of Kadus.
Well, I was trying to think something much more down.
Army of Dwarf Nunas.
I was not thinking something a little much more realistic that I play with set where they go, you know, but you know, just something that would be on the same where it would be a reason why they wouldn't fight the Empire, you know, or why they wouldn't really be sitting here with the other players doing X, you know. But and that's something that has to be clear to expectation. Like, no, the game that you guys are playing and this is your X expectation. Don't make a character that is gonna kind of go far off that expectation. And that's why I think sometimes you may end up getting players that just do spot checks because maybe they do have something they want the character to achieve, but because they know the overarching goal is to get to here, you know, they don't want to end up going. So instead of going left, they would have to go right to do it. And they don't want to do that because they know they're going to go further and further from the rest, and it becomes, you know, a big issue and problem, or it becomes something where they're kind of going to end up feeling a railroad that they have to still go left. So even they try to go right, they still have to go left.
Well, I mean, that's a fair point. I'm not sure, you know, that's applicable in my circumstance. I think it might actually apply to my droid player because, I mean, they literally had a choice of, and it kind of befalls on this droid, on this player, because of the way he's choosing to play his droid. But he had a choice between going, or the ship had a choice of going between Hypori or going to Kashyyyk, and technically go to Kessel and then Kashyyyk. But the players overwhelmingly opted to go to Kashyyyk instead of Hypori. So the player is kind of like annoyed, and I don't think the player is necessarily annoyed. Like, he wants to complete his character journey, but he's also sort of like, you know, it'd be fun to play a droid that's annoyed. So I'm gonna play this droid as he's a little bit annoyed that they got sidetracked on this, you know. So it's, to me, it's like, okay, that's him. He's taking an unideal circumstance and he's rolling with it. You know, he's being applicable to the circumstance. right? Like he's using it to elaborate on his character's personality, to expand on his character personality. So I mean, he might, as a character / player, feel like he's just on a railroad and he's unable to do anything. He might feel that way, but I'm not sure personally. You know, he strikes me as just he is along for the ride, and he just wants to be a funny battle droid that is weird and kills people.
Which is I personally think is okay, but I feel like an EXP system versus a milestone system wouldn't affect that. Like if he wanted that mentality, that can exist in both.
Yeah, that's sort of like that's what I'm kind of thinking in regards to him. He's a character who's definitely like milestone. If you told me he was a milestone player, I would believe it. I would believe it, because it's like he has these goals, but he doesn't tell anyone what those goals are. Not even the DM. So it's like, okay, I guess.
Well, that's just communication between DM and player. Like that is pretty much the motto of this podcast. You know, it's just communicating with between DM and players. You know, if I don't know what your character is traveling around the universe for, then I can't make anything for your character to do personally for itself. You know, if you don't tell me what it is your character is set out to do and you make it, then you are just here as a body at that
Yeah,
point.
but
That's my feeling.
But once again, that only applies is if that's what you're going to be facilitating from the story. If you are focused on a homogenized storytelling, where it's just like it doesn't matter what his personal goals is, as long as he goes through the main narrative, then it doesn't matter if he tells you what his personal goals is. You know.
Well, I was poorly responding, particularly to the droid, but yes. Sorry, I should have made that much clearer.
Well, let me ask you guys this: do you guys think? And I'm gonna say, try thinking abstractly. That's what I'm gonna try to say. Try thinking abstractly, and I'm also I'm gonna bring the chat into this. So if anyone in the chat has an opinion on this, you can chime in here. Do you think XP is necessary? Let me throw that out there. Like, what if we didn't have it? We got rid of it completely. We were like, we don't need XP.
So just XP, not like levels, but just the
Not levels, just XP.
Like the numerical value of XP. Like,
correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Personally, not really. I mean,
as long as you have some way to traverse one level to the other, XP is just the in between market. You could XP could be anything.
Yeah, you could literally level up from reaching a certain stat criteria. It's like, oh
yeah,
yeah,
oh.
yeah. That was a question.
Just a precursor, just to get from one point to another point. So
yeah, well, that's one of the things I thought about with Milestone, because it's like Milestone to me, it strikes me as like a way, like an alternative to actually doing XP. It's like, hey, you just reach this goal, and it's just another stepping stone. As Eve was saying, it's another stepping stone in your journey to becoming a mafia crime boss. It's another step in your journey to becoming a store manager.
So I just want to put this out there. I'm an advocate more for EXP than milestone leveling. I just
sure.
I just want people to think like
you have that experience. So I'm going to you because you have that experience.
Yeah, but I just want to make it clear. Like, I prefer EXP. Just throw it out there. I just know that sometimes I have used milestone and I have an opinion.
Okay. So, can you guys think of any alternative methods to XP?
I just listed one. That could be your stat criteria.
How about alternative uses for XP? Do you guys have any ideas for like what's an alternative use you could use XP for, other than just, hey, you go up a level?
I've never thought about it until you started talking about how Cypher allows you to use XP in different ways. So until recently, I never even considered spending EXP to do other things. Like, I never.
Your mind's blown.
It's not a concept that I'm used to. I don't think I have. Like, even in a point buy system, the experience points you get is to facilitate a number of points that you get, and then you increase your stat but as you increase the stat, it takes more points to do so. So I was like, even then, I'm like, I've never.
Have you ever played Warcraft 3?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember the Tomes of Experience?
Yes.
Okay. Did you know you could buy Tomes of Experience?
No.
Yes, there are in some games it's a random drop. You can get a Tome of Experience that drops. Okay. If you played Dota, that was one of the things that they used to have in Dota, or a version of Dota, where you could buy Tomes of Experience and just boom, level up. And that sort of was a cue to me, or a little nugget of information where it's like, all right, wait a minute. You can spend gold to purchase experience. Well, if you can do that, why can't you use experience to purchase other things? Whether it's, hey, I'm going to use experience to purchase knowledge, I'm going to use experience to enhance my role. You know, it's a trade-off. So it's like, all right, I'm going to burn some experience just to get give me a 1d6 extra to this roll. You know, I'm gonna cash in temporarily. I'm gonna spend some XP, and I'm gonna apply it to this roll, and maybe I can get something out of that. I'm losing the XP, sure, but if it's going to propel the story forward, if it's going to propel my character's growth forward, hopefully that's going to open doors to give me more XP than what I just spent. So I spent 100 XP to add 1d6. And now I just opened this door with this new character, this NPC, and I'm going to be able to follow him down the rabbit hole. And from following him down the rabbit hole, I'm opening my character to all kinds of potential. Like maybe this guy that I'm following down the rabbit hole, he has a friend who's a sorcerer. He has another friend who's a mechanic. He has another friend who's a airplane pilot. Well, okay, now I have these different avenues to explore. I have these different new characters to introduce myself to. And it's like I said, it's like an investment. You spend that 100 XP and you open the door for something else. And, you know, I just think it's like there's all kinds of scenarios and situations. You know, in 3.5, there's something called taking 10 and taking 20. Well,
it's in Pathfinder as well and Starfinder.
Right. So what if instead of rolling, you just spend XP to succeed? You know, just like in Cypher, it's like, hey, the DC for this is a 15. Well, what if I were to spend 200 XP or 500 XP? I don't know what type of XP system. Someone wants to do video game XP. It's like 500 XP is one kill. I like lower numbers. I don't like giving people 500,000 XP. I like to give like 10, 20, 30, etc. I like low numbers. But whatever metric you're using to give someone XP, it's like, okay, you spend 50 XP and you take a little bit of time, but you manage to succeed. You don't have to roll. You don't run the risk of the player. Like the player doesn't have to be afraid. You're not going to nat 1 and blow the entire thing. You know, you're not going to roll nat 1 and completely screw the pooch. So I was curious to see if you guys thought about that. If you guys thought, how did you think about if you use XP to buy clues? Like I've seen some games where DMs will have, they're usually like live streams and game shows where they'll have a clue set up. And as players gained XP, it's sort of like a Wheel of Fortune or a Jeopardy thing where you can spend XP to gain a critical clue to the game. So like you can either find out the name of the villain, a clue might be you get a powerful ally, like you get a demon friend who has insight knowledge and you can contact him every now and again to get information. What do you guys think about stuff like that?
I personally think that's kind of like it's a slippery slope. I feel like, it takes away, in my sense, the role play investigatory aspect of it, because it's like screw looking for clues, screw investigating different tablets and trying to decipher things. I'm just gonna spend AXP. Give me the name. Like that itself doesn't sit right with me. I've like I said, I've never considered using XP in other ways other than that until you mentioned Cypher. So it's something that I get to think from this day moving forward. But from what you're talking about before, I think it's just, if not used in a controlled way, it can just be exploited. Because I would give up half my EXP just to find out a critical clue. I would definitely do it. I just, especially if you know that the DM gives consistently regular EXP. Because what people talk about, seeing the numerical value of when they're going to level up, that is there, but you don't know exactly how much experience points you're going to get. You don't know if the questions you're going to give you is going to give you 1,000 XP or 10. You don't know if the monster that you're going to kill is going to give you 300 XP or 200 XP. You don't know the numbers unless you're like, cheating.
Unless you're me and I broadcast how, like, I'm going to broadcast in a bit. I'm going to show you guys the metrics I use. So,
but the players normally don't know the exact number that they're going to get in an encounter or completing a quest. So they're still as blind as they would be with milestone leveling. You don't know if they're going to level up in 2 months either. If they keep getting 10 experience points, they'll take 2 months to level up too, But I don't know. Like I said, I just feel like that's a slippery slope.
What do you think, Benefactor?
So I kind of in agreement with E with the whole spending EXP that way. To me, one of the ideas that I had thought of with spending EXP, since you've been talking about the Cyber Edition, with the Cyber Edition, is using like spending XP for inspiration as a way to boost rolls, but never in such of a hardcore manner that you put it. I have thought about something like that, spend it to do that, but I wouldn't really use it to be like, oh yeah, solve the little puzzle here by sacrificing your XP. Who here wants to be the XP sacrifice and figure out what's going on here, or to solve the door puzzle, type of thing. I was like, I went through all that trouble. At that point, I might as well just make it that they didn't even need to bother. Because all that trouble for somebody just spend the XP on it. It was just like, well, it was meant for you guys to actually try and slowly understand the mystery. But so yeah. So that's my idea. I would also love to show my EXP system, but because I know some of my players actually watch the podcast, and one of them is actually in the podcast, I can't really show how I do my EXP calculator.
What are you talking about? I was there from the ground up, Benefactor.
I know, but I don't think you've seen the EXP calculator.
Yes, and I saw you showed me the only thing that you haven't showed me is the weapon system, because you even showed me the how do you create the monsters. You didn't show me the reran version. You showed me the original version.
Okay, well,
I don't know if you changed it. I don't know if you changed it since. I don't, because remember, you was working on it when we was working together. So you would ask for my opinion on how to do things. So you were showing me when you was physically working on it on your tablet at work.
Damn, I'm getting old, man. You know what? I'll show mine after Crusader.
I'm not ashamed to show how my work. I like to share.
Well, the thing is, I doubt it's gonna happen. I don't really have the money to do that kind of capital, but it is a game system I want to really kind of work on, edit, and make. But I'll have to do that now to draw. People that'll help with little other things.
Luke says, "Sup, dog."
This man here. So so I do try to keep it a little bit under wraps, but I don't mind showing the XP system. It'll give us some stuff to show over with people, right?
Well, we got Niraj. Shadowrun would allow the use of its XP for a number of things beyond just leveling, especially with mages where you used it as a currency for summoning spirits, and a couple other things. See, I love that. That's great. And like, I was just thinking about what you were saying, Benefactor. There were times in your game in Scion where I would have loved for my John Constantine to spend XP to figure out or do some of the things that he was running up against, because I felt the Warlock class was just way too limiting for what I wanted to do, especially at the level that I was at. Now you're probably like, well, no, you're supposed to work with your team, or whatever your dungeon master philosophy is. But I'm also not saying that, like, I'm not saying that you give away keys to the kingdom with the XP. I'm just thinking from a dungeon master's perspective, there's different things you could use XP for. And this is going to kind of go into my next point, which, as you guys were saying, it's like, oh, you're giving too much XP. You're giving too much XP. All right. There is a flip side of this. And I think I've already mentioned this to Benefactor. And I plan to mention, or I've already mentioned this to Lady Potato when her and I spoke. Taking away XP, losing XP. And typically when you hear losing XP, you think like, oh, I didn't complete the quest, so I missed out on XP. No. I'm not talking about that losing of XP. I'm talking about the, I brought this up before, the old school Shadow Dragon. The old school Shadow Dragon in D&D. Its Shadow Breath would do 1 level of experience if you got hit by it. So you just instantly, you de-level on the spot mid-fight because of this thing's Shadow Breath. I love that. I love that concept. I love terrorizing my players in that regard.
I think I meant to bring that up during when you mentioned that too, but I'll bring it up here.
You've actually brought it up before, and you guys talked on it briefly.
Did I don't know if I mentioned this. Old school undead used to function in that in that way. Did I really? I saw my age showing.
The consensus was it's a slippery slope because it depends on. It was one of the one with Lady Potato was in the chat, and you guys were talking about how. I think you actually brought up the Shadow Dragon in that example.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I did. I already brought.
But it was a very brief thing. You guys didn't talk about it for long, but you know. The Benefactor was more like, hey, you could end up pissing off the players if you abuse it too much. Like,
of course,
you're stripping them of their power, making them less effective. And overall, it's like you can effectively make all the hard work that they've done superfluous.
But yeah, because it was something that the undead used to do, and that was the fun thing that would make undead one of the scariest monsters that you usually try to avoid. Was because they either hit you XP, they hit you with stats, where you could even permanently lose your stats and stuff like that.
Yeah. And
I did love that for undead. I mean to cut you off there. I did love that for undead. That's why I'm trying even in my own game to make undead rather a scary thing to face, because that's how undead used to be. It was like, it's not an enemy you want to run into and fight.
Oh yeah.
But it makes, in my opinion, kind of makes it like a little bit unfun. You know, it's just like, oh, I kind of don't want to run into this enemy, so we're just gonna avoid it. Like, you know what I mean? Like, why would I ever want to encounter an enemy? And what's the purpose of the enemy?
Well, that's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. In my Star Wars game, they're about to roam around on Kashyyyk, and Niraj in the chat here can tell you he understands the lore of Kashyyyk. He understands what Kashyyyk is like from the lore. Every other player has like nuggets of information. Like, oh, I saw it in the Clone Wars TV show. I saw it in the Star Wars movie. Like, Kashyyyk looked like a really nice place. And these guys have no idea what they're about to get into. Then when they spoke to one of the guides, one of the NPC guides, he told them, if you see a spider, run. And because they're like, oh, well, what's so bad about the spiders? And he's like, well, there's different breeds of spiders. If you're such a novice, you don't know the difference between the spiders and what their each individual powers are, just run away. Don't engage them. Don't try talking to them. Don't try capturing them. Don't mess around with them. Just run. Okay? So there's an advantage to educating your players. In old school D&D, as he's saying about the undead, old school D&D, you didn't mess with the undead. Like, just people, like the civilians and the citizens. It was anything undead related, you run the other way. Like, you don't get in the way. And that's where the heroes are supposed to step up, and they're the ones who are supposed to, dive head first into fighting the undead, because they're heroes. They're adventurers. They do their stupid things where they defy logic and reason. So I see what you're saying, Eve, where you're like, that's a slippery slope. It's dangerous. But just because, like, Ty Beard.
There's just nothing that feels good about losing strength. There's no like.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. I've seen players who got their asses handed to them, completely bent over backwards. Benefactor here being one of them, where his character literally survived by 1 hit point, after a Revenant hit him with one ability.
That's
You know, like
that's different than losing strength, like and becoming verifiably weaker. This getting bodied in a fight is different from I just lost 3 levels and
Yeah,
7
well, the level I thought he was gonna mention where the worms literally ate through my constitution, and I still to this day have not regained that constitution. I thought he was gonna use that
Well,
example.
those
Well, that's
those still
another one,
exist
yes.
though. Constitution damage and those stuffs can still do, but those are ways to be remedied and rectified. You know, certain things like de-leveling is very hard
Oh,
to
you know
do.
I
And then
agree.
with the de-leveling thing or losing levels, you lose powers,
Losing power, yeah.
you lose abilities, you things that you used to be able to do, you don't have them anymore. The tools that you used to have, and to me, that's unfun. That there's no way I'm going to enjoy losing my kit.
Well, yeah, that like I said, I
But
disagree
that's also
with.
depends.
It's a slippery slope for that because it's like,
Right.
oh,
But that also depends on your XP system, right? And like to me, my experience with dungeon masters is they don't like giving out XP. I have no idea why. They're like I said, the game that Benefactor and I were in on Thursdays. That guy was like, "We're doing milestone." My brother, when he ran his one shot of the Frost Maiden, okay, he's like, "We're doing milestone," and I was like, "You piece of shit, milestone." I fucking hate milestone. Like, what incentive is there for me to do anything? Well, okay, I guess I'm just going to continue playing Murder Hobo because I have no incentive to do anything other than Murder Hobo with milestone. You know, that's my perception of it, at least, and that's also with my perception of the character I'm playing. Like, and I still role played the character. My character didn't go Murder Hobo, but that's my feelings on milestone, or it was at that time.
If my opinion is, if you chose to not have an incentive to interact with his story, that means you didn't care about his story. Like, it doesn't have to be milestone because, like I said, when it comes to just playing the game of D&D, whether it's EXP or milestone, you're there to roleplay. Milestone and EXP doesn't stop you from roleplay. It doesn't prevent you from experiencing the game as a whole. All it does, milestone versus EXP or XP, is give you a physical value or a tangible thing of like, I'm going to get stronger by leveling up. That doesn't do anything in between of you roleplay. You can still do all the roleplay, all the character interactions, and whatnot. Because the DM who's giving you XP may not count social interactions as EXP worthy. So you don't get any EXP from interacting with them. You only get EXP from fighting.
Correct.
So you know what I mean? So you could spend the entire campaign role playing your ass off. You could talk to every NPC, you know, flirt with the queen, get all the alliances, and you still don't level up. At that point, in milestone, technically you would have been milestone. You would have leveled up because you completed a milestone if that's what the DM had set. But in a traditional EXP system, you wouldn't have gotten anything. You would have role played to your heart's content and got nothing.
In the traditional XP, no. In traditional XP, no.
So my thing is, if you had no incentive in that instance, that means you personally didn't care about whatever story he was trying to tell. You could have found an incentive to try to experience the story, but for whatever reason, it maybe wasn't entertaining to you. Maybe you was frustrated with the players. I wasn't there. So, but
yeah. No. To me, it's more so if I have an incentive to gather XP, because I'm looking at it as I want to level up. I want to get stronger. And this is where I'm probably an anomaly and weird, because I look at it as I only want so many levels. I want to get to the potential where I'm unlocked and I'm comfortable in what I want to do. Now, once I get that unlocked, whether it's level 6 or level 8, usually it's around 6 to 8 where I'm comfortable with, where like I'm good. It's like I don't care about any other level ups. I don't care about any other XP. I have everything I need. I'm good. So like once, like I'm looking to get to that point. Once I get to that point, I just don't care about leveling anymore. And so my concern, or my looking at it of things, is okay, I want to get to this point, and I would ideally prefer the DM to give me an incentive or an encouragement to pursue that, to go that route. Now, if he's just saying milestone, then what it tells me is, 1, he's lazy. 2, everything I do doesn't matter. That's what it tells me. Now, you're saying, well, it's more involved than that, but
it is, because in order for you to level up, you need to meet the milestone. That's the incentive. You have to meet the milestone.
Yeah. So like, you're looking at it like you're looking at it from the opposite of how, like, you and I are looking at the same thing, and you're seeing my alternative as what milestone is good for. So it's like we agree, but our solution for it are the exact opposites, or at least in our perception, they're the exact
For
opposite.
me, is that when you go, well, he's using milestones, so that tells me that he's lazy. That's pretty presumptuous of you. That's what I'm getting at, because like,
yeah,
even if he did, you don't know how much. Even let's say he did use EXP system, you don't know how much EXP he's going to give you, so you don't know if you're ever going to reach that goal that you are comfortable at.
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing. That's the other thing. Like, he's running a pre-made module, okay, and his goal of, like, your method of milestone is each individual player. Okay. Well, this is a one-shot campaign. So his entire objective of milestone is, one, simplify the XP gain. So he's not tallying every little XP after every single encounter, after every single little thing. He doesn't have to worry about that. All he has to do is, okay, you reach this goal marker, this milestone, you get this XP. If you don't do that, well, then you don't get any XP. Okay, that's how he's looking at it. Now, again, it's a one shot, and he's throwing us all together. So he doesn't really, and he's also making up stuff about our character on the spot. He came up with like little secrets, and then we rolled dice, and then he came up with like several generic secrets. Then we rolled dice to find out what our secret is. And then he gives us a little sheet of paper, and then we go to a secret room, and he tells us about our secret. And then we go back to the table when we're supposed to keep our secret a secret, unless our character chooses not to keep it a secret. And then there's ramifications if you decide not to. So it's like, that's his method of giving us some level of character interaction. But for the most part, he's trying to tell the players, this isn't a you story. This is about the campaign's story. And, in that case, it's my brother's campaign. I can kind of trust his method and his philosophy. Yeah, so they're actually a part of the game, as I see Luke here says. The secrets are a part of the Icewind Dale. It's built into the game. Yeah, so that's a part of it. So, but like I was saying, his mentality is, I'm trying to push the story forward. Everything else be damned. I don't really care about everything else, And my brother's method of DMing is, I like to just throw a bunch of stuff at the players and watch all hell break loose and the players scramble throughout all this chaos. So like that's my brother's method of DMing. All right. Which, that can be fun and everything. But again, to me as a player, I'm looking at it as like, okay, everything I do doesn't really have an impact. It doesn't have a consequence, which he would argue, no, there's a lot of consequences and impacts to what you do. It's affecting other people in other games that I run. But again, just to me as a player going in, I'm like, okay, everything I do doesn't matter. So why should I care? Now my character has his own goal and motivation, and his goals and motivations are very fucking simple. Like I boiled them down to very simple. He's trying to die in honorable combat. So, there's moments where in that game where my brother had provoked my character to pretty much ready to fight city guards and town guards, unafraid of the consequence. It's like, I'm looking at this saying, I'll probably die. But my character's principles, my character's design, everything about him says, this is the hill he's going to die on. So if the NPCs are going to make a big deal of it, I'm getting ready to throw down. But I was going to say the other thing was, as I was trying to say earlier about Ty Beard. Ty Beard, he's a lawyer. He's a nerd. He sometimes goes on Nick Recada's stream. He has said that, in his game, if you go into his game thinking that every encounter is going to be fair, you're in for a rude awakening. And I love that. I love that philosophy, because it's like, in real life, there aren't, like, every encounter isn't fair. If you go into a police station and You think you're going to lay down the law as a nobody. You're up against 20, 30, 40 cops. Good luck, Godspeed to you, you know? So like that's not a fair encounter. And that's sort of how I see when going back to the XP demotion, going back to having your XP taken away, and even timing into a milestone where it's like, okay, what's my incentive to keep going forward? So I like to use XP to encourage players, be yourself, explore the world however you want to explore it. Okay. And you'll come across things, you'll experience things, and you'll say, hey, I want to do this, or hey, I want to do that. You let them go in that regard. And I think if I encountered a milestone as you're describing, Eve, where the DM was working with me and they were like, hey, what are your character's goals? And then I tell them my goal, and then they're like, all right, we're going to come up with this milestone, this milestone. And they're just nodding and smiling at me like, oh, yeah, that's a very good goal. Good goal. I'm using milestones. So, as you continue that path, continue that journey, you might come across other things along the way. You'll get XP for it. I'd probably be for milestone. I'd probably be like, yeah, it's like a guide rail for my character or my play style, but it's not too constricting. So I can comprehend what you're saying about milestone, how it's good for creating a guidepost and giving a metric for a player to follow. But every single DM I have seen use it, every game I've been in where the DM has used it, it's effectively lazy. That's just, lazy isn't the correct term to use, but that's how it comes off to me. It comes off like the DM doesn't care. They're more interested in their story. They're more interested in throwing the players through a maze and letting all havoc break loose and not letting the players play their character.
Which I understand, which is why I preface from the very beginning, it really depends on how milestone is implemented. But every gripe that you just said just now can happen with EXP.
Correct. Yes.
It's not solely a problem that's a milestone versus the EXP thing. It's a DM and creativity.
Yeah. And that is fair. That is fair. It is absolutely, which is also why I'm not afraid of showing my method. I want to share that knowledge. I want other people to see, look, it doesn't have to be as painstaking as, hey, you get 10 XP for killing this goblin, you get 20 XP for killing these 2 goblins, and you get 3 XP or 30 XP for killing these 3 goblins. Like, it doesn't have to be that much of mundane and pedantic nuance. It doesn't have to be that. It can be a lot easier. It can be a lot simpler. And it can also be a little bit more consistent than what I see other DMs do. Because like I said, when I see other DMs doing it, it's like, look, I'm a humble guy. I just want my XP. I prefer XP over loot personally. Okay.
It depends on the situation, because I do agree with that, because there was one time in the Benefactors campaign, I felt starved for EXP. And it's not because he was not giving EXP, it's because I was basically shackled to the party. And the party was not going anywhere and doing nothing. So I was like, and I'm like,
I felt that too in his game. I felt that too. Like his game, I felt really starved for XP. It's like, give me XP.
Like I was like, more. I'm like, master, please, more. Can I have some more?
Yeah, like I said, it's like I'm in a desert here. I'm just like, XP, please. And like someone's like jiggling a canteen full of XP, and they're like, yeah, nah. Like that's how I felt. Like, damn it, Benefactor, give me some XP. Come on, please.
Because at that point, because my character in that campaign didn't have many magical items. I mostly had starting equipment, and I was able to do one like off side quest, which got me like a special breastplate. Mostly everything else I had was starting equipment. And I was my character was headstrong and very combat focused. She wasn't like a problem solver in a sense. So when it came to problem solving, other people can do that. You need some skulls to be cracked, call her. But it left a lot of the other social interactions to the other players. So a lot of times, because of the way I was playing my character, I just had to sit there and not doing anything and wait for them to either solve problems or try to move the story along, or at least go somewhere before I ever get a chance to do anything. And because they weren't really actively doing that frequently, a lot of times I just spent time just doing nothing, going nowhere. And the one time, I believe at one point, is like, I asked the Benefactor, can I just go outside and fight a bear? or fight something? Just go. Can I go out in the wilderness and just fight anything? Like,
because he did, and he did,
and I did. It's like, I said, at that point, I was just like, there's nothing I can do. There's nowhere I can go. Can I just go outside and kill something? Because
that wasn't my fault. I was like, oh yeah, you want to go? Yeah, sure. They're sitting in town for like just ever. So,
all right, I'm gonna bring this up. Show you guys. I believe, Benefactor, you've already seen my method, and technically, Eve, you have too. You were a player in my game for a while, so you've seen some of how I do this stuff. Here we are. So let me zoom in so you guys can see a little bit better. So this is very ugly. This is not presentation worthy. My other sheet here is. So this is the player. These are the categories that I calculate for the player. So this past session, I have it over here. This past session, she didn't play. She skipped. So, okay, no XP. No, I don't have to post that. I post these all in Discord too. So that's the other thing I do for my method is I post them in Discord. I let the other players see. I let all the players, I notify them, hey, here's your XP for the session. This is your XP for the session. And I let them know, like, hey, here you go. And they can take a look at this and they can say, all right, this is how I did. Okay, in these things, like a report card. All right. And this is the part that I think a lot of DMs get afraid of. They're scared. They get caught up in all these other things that they're worried about. Oh, when do I spawn this monster? What do I do in this boss fight? What if they don't solve the riddle? You know, they get caught up in those things. That this is one of those things they don't like to think about, or it's difficult to keep track of. And I'm not perfect with it. I just do a shotgun blast. I get an idea as to what it is that I'm trying to, communicate to the player. Like, you did this really good. Okay, keep doing this. This is good. Or as long as you keep doing this, you're fine. You're going to keep getting XP. I'm going to scroll down here. So this is one session right here. Okay, that's one session. Here goes the other session. All right. Players are in generally the same ballpark. They're in 1,000 to 900 or so XP, 800 XP. They're generally in that area. Okay, I'm going to go down another. All right, this was a slower session, but you can see we still have 1,000. Gunner has 1,100. Galar has 1,000. Shade has 800. Saki has 600. So, you know, as they're progressing, as they're doing stuff, they're having a consistent flow of XP. They can get an idea as well as where they're good at. You know, if a player's good at role play, they're going to max out role play XP, which I'll switch the other screen. I'll show you what I mean when I say max out. So here's how I break down achievements, achievement XP. So you have single achievements. Okay. We could talk about achievements at another time, but I do have achievements in my games. And if someone achieves an achievement, sometimes the achievement will tell you what XP bonus they give you, or I might just arbitrarily give a player XP. If I feel like they're lacking, like that session, they didn't have any XP from something. It's like, okay, I'll give you some XP from completing achievement. If they complete multiple achievements, that's where I exceed the max that I have here. I have a max of 1,000 XP per session. Okay, this is the cap right here. Anything I put in the red is supposed to be the cap. If it's green, that means it can exceed the cap. So they achieve multiple achievements, they can exceed the cap. And then combat, this is the part that a lot of DMs in my experience have problems with. I've had several DMs ask me about this, and I follow like a very simple metric here where I look at how many kills you get. And depending on how difficulty, if you kill a level 1 goblin, okay, 10 XP. You kill a level 2 undead sorcerer, okay, probably 2 or 20 or 40 XP. If you kill an orc commander, probably 50 XP. You kill a dragon whelp, probably 100 XP. All right. So I basically calculate out how many kills did they get. Then I start going into the next category, which would be combat effectiveness. Okay. How effective was this person in combat? And my metric for combat effectiveness isn't going to be what other DMs' metric for combat effectiveness is. All right. I'm looking at the situation and saying, okay, was this the optimal thing to do? In a previous session or a previous game that Benefactor and Luke in chat, they were on a train. And one of the things that Luke here did was he was tumbling. He kept tumbling and rolling all over a moving train while he's riding on top of it. And inevitably, he had a nat 1 and fell off the train. Well, strategically, rolling around on the roof of a moving vehicle is not an effective way to conduct yourself in combat. All right. Now, take that same circumstance minus the train, and he's doing the tumbling thing to keep himself moving, to keep himself from avoiding damage. Now, suddenly, he's going the opposite way. Now, he's actually benefiting. He's being effective in combat. He's surviving. So, for me, I give players a boost of XP just for that, depending on how well they perform. I don't show what would be a negative to that. I just look at it and say, okay, they did some pretty good moves. They have several moves they did that were really effective and very strong. I like citing the one combat encounter where Benefactor was riding his Pegasus, and he analyzed the battlefield. There's all these tentacles around. He analyzed the battlefield and said, I am the only guy who can quickly zip around the map to deal with these ranged casting tentacles. So I'm going to do that. I don't know what anyone else is going to do, but I'm going to do that one job. And that to me was combat effectiveness. That's like, he goes up. He gets some XP for that because he analyzed his strength and did it. Clank was another one. Clank with his ranger. He's like, I got a bow. I'm the only person in the party with a bow. So I'm going to take on the things that are at range that are dangerous or are too time consuming for melee to get involved in. Okay. Again, combat effectiveness, which also goes into combat support, which I've had a few sessions ago. I had a player who's like, how did I get XP? I wasn't in combat. The other players were. And he was basically sitting behind a computer chair, using a computer and giving them information. Well, whether he likes it or not, that is combat support. That's him aiding the people who are actually in combat, and he's gaining experience of combat. So, and then I throw in their boss XP, 100, 500. And then it comes out to like 100 to 500 XP per boss. But if you throw in ads and you throw in all this other stuff, the XP rapidly goes up to 100 XP or so. And then I throw in this extra category, Valor. Valor is someone going above and beyond. If you recall, Eve, when you guys took on the Psycho Council, okay, you three, okay, basically performed Valor with I would say shooting stars. You guys went above and beyond. You pulled your weight. You made it work. You guys have any comments? You guys want to chime in, say anything about any of this stuff? Does this stuff look dumb, stupid, or does it look good? Or
no, it seems effective for what you are trying to do. I wouldn't say I wouldn't have don't have a similar system. I don't have it in this much detail, whatever.
I know. Like this was all in my head. And so for this episode, for this podcast, I decided I have to kind of like get this out of my head and put it down so that someone can read it.
Because I don't normally show like the breakdown
Yeah.
Of what
No one does.
I
No
just go
one
like
does.
you gain this much EXP, but I do also factor in role playing. Now, the reason why I don't like I don't want to show favoritism. I don't want to show that I'm viewing someone's role play better than someone else's.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I don't think you role played this session as well as this person, when the other person can be like, well, I tried my hardest. So I don't want to potentially, because it depends on your player group, but I don't want to potentially foster any negative emotions based off of perceived favoritism.
Yeah, and that's for a style that I get.
I can't say anything much because you just said the same thing. Except I like mentioned earlier. I like the way you done the breakdown. So I definitely use that method. So your method is pretty similar. The only difference is I kind of follow for combat XP the standard Dungeons and Dragons 5e way of doing it. So that part is a little bit different, but I do take into account various other factors in combat and stuff like that when doing combat experience, as well as like role playing, things like that, which you're certainly getting down to.
Yeah.
I don't judge people's performance in combat either. I don't be like, well, you perform exceptionally well in combat, or you perform exceptionally bad in combat.
Well, I should have prepared that. I could probably show you. For combat particularly, I do have a metric. I actually have a metric to determine how someone performed. I've shown my players it before. I've shown it. Benefactor has seen it. I have a damage calculator, and I know it's called a damage calculator, and that can be inferred as, oh, you're only looking at damage dealt. No, you can factor into this damage calculator how much damage you've taken. So if you're a tank, hey, how much have you mitigated? How much are you absorbing? How much are you directing fire to you? You can calculate how many enemies someone has killed. You can calculate how much healing someone has done, how effective their healing has been. There's all kinds of calculations you could plug into this thing, and you can objectively scrutinize how someone performed. Now, I do a lot of it in my head now because I can just see the numbers, and I can calculate it in my head just observing how the battlefield unfolds. But there is a way you can actually objectively say to someone, you made some really bad calls. But if you don't have the stomach for that, then I don't recommend doing it.
Well,
I don't have that
I
problem.
can do the same thing, but I don't penalize them in experience wise for making bad calls. Like, you definitely could have made better decisions and choices, but I don't be like, well, because of that, you gain less experience points. I don't.
Yeah. No. Yeah, I don't do that. I don't do that. What I do is I basically say, well, this is what you did, so that's what you get. That's how I take it. I don't take it as, oh, well, you didn't do this, therefore.
There are varied counters, and not everyone is going to be optimal in each encounter. So I try to factor that in. That because, like, what if there's an enemy that's really resistant to a certain type of damage, and this player has built himself to do that primary source of damage? There's not much they can do in that particular fight. They might shine in other fights, because this enemy is resistant to majority of their personal things. They won't be able to perform as well as they normally would.
Correct. And well, that's where I look at like combat effectiveness, right? So even if you're ineffective, say you're fighting an undead, and you're like, hey, all my things don't do anything. I'm using blunt damage against undead. Undead are resistant to blunt damage. So I'm not going to be effective. I'm not going to be killing these things. Well, that's very short-sighted of you to perceive that as all you can do. If you as the player, your only metric is, I can't kill anything, ergo I'm useless. Well, you've already defeated yourself, because and again, this just my rating experience as a Warcraft player. It's like, no, if I can't kill these things, then my objective is then to tank or distract or do some other talent that I have and leave killing to my team. Now, again, I come at most things from a tank personality, because I'm a tank focused or tank centered mind. So I don't have a problem jumping into the tank role.
Okay, but which era of World of Warcraft are you talking about? Because during the Burning Crusade, right, and some classes were only brought to raid events because of a passive buff that they brought, not because they were effective in battle. It's like maximizing the buff
Yeah.
that
Well, that was
their physical presence.
That was true all throughout my experience of WoW.
Because
Okay,
enhancement shamans were like terrible, but that Wind Fury totem.
I am technically a Burning Crusade player, like a little B Burning Crusade player. Okay, I played Classic, didn't like it. I barely got past like level 5. I was like, this game is dumb. I'm going back to Star Wars Galaxies. But my brother got into it and got me into Burning Crusade. I was playing on my mom's account before I got my own account. He's like, play my mom's mage. Just play her. We need her for this dungeon. She's a mage. They're powerful. So I already knew how to play, the end game raids and the heroics at that time. All right. And so I get what you're saying, where it's like, oh, you bring someone in just for a little buff that they get.
Yeah, their actual effectiveness was superfluous. Like they were
Correct. But from my tank mentality, my prime was Wrath of the Lich King. That was my prime, and
of course it was.
Of course. But that was probably the curse and the blessing for WoW with me, because that was fantastic. There were a lot of things about Burning Crusade I did not like. And I know that a lot of the things that other people liked about Burning Crusade, I hated with a passion. Mainly the Beastmaster tank, tanking Illidan with a beast, with someone's bear pet. Like that's infuriating to me. But
that was glorious. That was when animals had actual stat blocks. Like
see, exactly. You're like, that was awesome. And I'm like,
because they homogenized everything after some point. I believe it was Wrath of the Lich King. It didn't matter what animal you picked. Like they all did the same flipping damage. And then they added the talent trees, which I'm like, I like. They had the ferocious pest versus the tenacious pest versus. I liked that because it made pet types unique again, But I liked that certain cats that you tame had different stats. Like you couldn't catch the same cat. Like, you know.
Well, like I was saying, like to me as a Wrath of the Lich King player, I looked at it as that was dumb, but as I continue to play World of Warcraft into Mist of Pandaria and Warlords of Draenor and Legion. Okay, Legion was the last expansion pack I played of WoW. To hell with Blizzard, to hell with WoW. But as I watched the game progress, starting with Cataclysm going into Pandas, that progression, that transition period, I noticed they dumbed the game down more and more to the point where all those little niches, like, hey, you're here just to give us the Wind Fury totem. That's the only reason you're here. They began to eliminate that. And they began to eliminate that, creating this necessary thing where no one was necessary. Where it's like, oh, well, we have an elemental shaman. We don't need a mage. And that's a part of what killed me with Warcraft or World of Warcraft, is the fact that they eliminated the niche that everyone brought to the table. It's like, well, and we talked about this in previous episodes on the stream, where the uniqueness of the characters and homogeny of the characters is dying off with 5e, where it's like, oh, well, the paladin can be a sorcerer, and paladin casting fireball. What's the problem with that? Well, it's like, well, what's the point of being a sorcerer if the paladin has better stats than the sorcerer?
Well, I would say because not every party will have a paladin or a sorcerer. So a character that can technically be both. I mean, not every party will have the perfect balance of everything. So, and allowing classes to, I guess, take other class abilities from other classes allows for a more diverse group when you have like 3 warlocks. Because if you have 3 warlocks but no variation, you just have 3 of the same class. But when you have a warlock that can cast cleric spells, and then a warlock who can pull out a sword and slice niggas, and then you have a warlock that can turn into a dragon or whatever. You may have 3 warlocks, but each one of them function differently because of that. Because of that ability to dive into other specializations per se. But beyond that, back to what your original point was, combat effectiveness and
So, I get your point where it's like, well, not everyone's the same combat effectiveness. But to me, I look at it as like, well, you get what you contribute to the combat encounter. So if you don't contribute, if your solution is I give up, your combat effective, like you're not going to get a combat effectiveness boost. You're like that 50 XP you're not getting. That 100 XP you're not getting because you're just like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sit here and just swing.
So that I was just about to ask you that. So how would you determine when they're not when they have given up? Like how would you determine what is the deciding factors? Like, okay, this person has given up.
Well, that's a good question because as DMs, this is something we do and we don't really talk about it. People don't talk about it. But when a player is talking to you as the DM, you read their vibe. Okay? So if you say, all right, Jackaran, your turn. What are you doing? And I say, well, I don't know. I guess I'm just going to attack this guy. Now, contrast that to me saying, well, I don't know. I'm going to attack this guy. I think I'm going to attack him. Two different tones, two different mentalities. You can tell the player, their headspace is in the game. You can tell their head, like they're thinking. The wheels are turning in their head versus, well, I don't know what to do. And I'm just stumped. In my Star Wars game, we had this guy who his combat effectiveness, I would put, like his combat effectiveness would go up and down, just all over the place. And he would do something like this is, I'm not kidding. This is something that literally happened. Literally. All right. Gunner, you take, rolls dice, 20 vitality of damage. 24 vitality of damage. And you're like, damn, that's a lot of health. 24 is a lot of damage to take. All right. Medic, your turn. What do you do? The medic? Does anyone need any healing? What do you mean? What do you mean? Does anyone? You literally just heard a guy take 24 hit points of damage, and now you're asking the question, does anyone need healing? Now, he could be playing his character. I give him the benefit of the doubt. He's playing his character. All right. Gunshots are going off everywhere, but all hell is breaking loose on the battlefield. Okay. What does this guy do? I'm going to just stay here and hide. That's my turn. That's your turn? Like, that's your turn? You're just going to stay there and hide? Like, you're the medic. All right, you're right. I'm going to do a spot check. What are you spotting for? Like, you're just going to arbitrate. I'm going to look around. So, like, that's an example to me as a DM. This is someone who maybe they're not experienced, maybe whatever circumstances they have going into that game. Okay? They're not being combat effective. If you spend, and this guy did, 4 rounds doing nothing but a spot check, no healing, no engagement, just hiding and spot checking, you're not being effective. Like, objectively, you are spending 4 rounds. That's 4 rounds. You could have just been somewhere else. You could have been doing the dishes. You could have been walking your dog. You could have been feeding your dog. You didn't have to sit here in the game, sit here at the table, playing with these other people. We could have just skipped your turn entirely and nothing would have changed. Like, nothing happened. So again, like, I look at things like that. I read the player, I read what they're saying, and I analyze them. When my spotlight, when my eye of Sauron is on a player, I'm scrutinizing everything they're doing top down. What are you doing? You know?
I do something kind of like that. Like if they go into an encounter and, they don't do certain things when they miss certain opportunities. After it's over, it's like, hey, you could have done this and that in that situation. They're like, damn, I could have. I'm like, like, yeah.
Right. And, and I do that. I've gotten scrutiny from Benefactor and Lady Potato for saying this, but from level 1 to 6, I give my players training wheels. Okay. And that's to basically, like, when I see them do things that are wrong or amiss, I let them know, hey, you could have done this, or you could have done that. And that helps open their mind. It helps them think more critically and say, oh, I could have. I didn't realize. And then I observe them and I watch. And almost every player does it. Benefactor here is an exception. But almost every player does it. They forget that thing. So I just got to give them a little bit of a nudge. Hey, you could have done this. You could have done that. And then they typically, they take off. They get it. It clicks. They said, oh, okay, I could do this. And then Luke in chat, he's one of them. He's a guy who, after just a little bit of a nudge, the light bulb comes on and he gets it. It's, oh, okay, I can do this and I can do that and I can do this. But every now and again, you get a player who they might get it and then they choose not to, or they just don't get it.
Well,
and so, like, to me,
yeah, that's true.
To me as a DM, I don't know, I know that I don't have the communication skills for everybody. I can communicate with some people, and some people can understand what I'm saying, and they can get where I'm coming from. But you have to live with the reality of life. There are some people, no matter what you say, they're not going to like you. They're not going to be able to talk to you. They have no way of communicating with you. The light bulb doesn't come on, or the switch doesn't click. Sorry if that seemed like a long-winded rant.
Oh, it's totally fine.
But the Benefactor is far from perfect. You haven't been able to experience some of the stuff, but we all make our mistakes. One of my favorite ones of the Benefactor was one that happened in the campaign that we're currently playing. He have something called a research and development system, and he in order to upgrade one of his items, he had to buy a computer. Now, computers have different tiers in them. The tiers for them indicate how difficult they are to hack into. So the higher tier the computer, the stronger the computer is, the harder it is to hack into. Now, you can buy something called countermeasures to install into your computer. It costs a little more, but they come in various levels, from firewalls to fake shells to the various things, alarms, whatnot. So he does that, and then immediately goes on a mission and tries to hack into a computer and triggers the countermeasures and erases everything from the computer. And he's like, I just bought a computer with countermeasures. Why didn't I check to see if the computer had countermeasures? Like, the fuck? That was one of my favorite things. I was like, yup, I would tell you. Now, what ended up happening, like, he rolled a nat 1, but I said even if he rolled a 2, right, he failed it more than 10 or more, so he didn't have time to react to the countermeasures being triggered. He failed to save by more than 10. So it was just like instant. It wiped. If he got anything higher, he would have probably been able to have time to react and try to get information before it was wiped clean. But it just so happened that it ended up being like that.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say I might put him a little bit on blast as we proceed down my list here. So just ready the lube. I'm not gonna put him on full blast.
I'm human. I don't care.
So I would say for me, this is one of my lower used areas is the quest XP, because this is a little bit more like milestone here. So as you complete a quest or you do something, this is where you'd get that XP. And how I have it metriced or designed is it's like, okay, here's your individual XP or your individual quest maybe. Okay. Now, single quest could be generic. It could be a player quest. It could be a group quest. It could be whatever. It's just a quest. And then if you help someone else with their quest, I give you XP for that. So that's also to incentivize group cooperation. And so it's like, all right, I don't want to be here, but because you helped this player do the thing, you're getting some XP too, because you're helping them, you're encouraging them to complete their quest. And all of these always translate to you can effectively stack a quest XP to infinity. I know I put a cap there.
The cap for XP is typically relegated to a single quest. So depending on how severe the quest is, if it's a simple quest, it's like, okay, 500 XP. Go here and find some guards and give them this note. Okay, very simple quest, 500 XP. Maybe I might drop that down to like 100 or 200 XP, depending on the circumstance. Are the guards in town and it's safe, or are the guards in a jungle or a forest where it's dangerous? Then we go down to role play, which I have acting in character, role playing with others, world interaction, NPC engagement, and completing an NPC's quest. Completing an NPC's quest is something that is really hard for players to figure out what the hell that is, but that's effectively, some NPCs have their own quests. They have their own things that they're trying to do, and if you happen across, usually through role play, if you happen across what their quest is and you help them out with it, absolutely you're going to get XP for that. And sometimes the players don't realize they stumbled upon something like that. They might not realize, hey, they killed a scientist, or they killed a warlord. Maybe they opened the door for someone. Maybe they offered someone a potion. Whatever it is that they did, it could trigger a NPC's quest and give them some extra XP. I have those set up all throughout the world and my games. I heavily, like I said, I focus on role playing. I heavily focus role play because once they're hooked into role playing, everything else falls into a line. Everything else makes sense. They get it.
I have a particular question for the Benefactor.
Sure.
So in your game, Scion, you normally had multiple different ways for the players to gain experience points. Like you had the guild system versus various different activities that they could participate in throughout the world. Like if they went to a town, something would be happening, and that can garnish you EXP, or social stuff that can trigger certain events, or even surprise things that if they interacted could cause a whole nother event in general. What do you do when players start to get gaps in EXP? Like when people start to out level each other, how do you balance that? And it's going to go the same thing for you, Crusader, after. How do you balance when people start getting ahead or pulling ahead, either from, missed sessions or players actively doing things to get more EXP?
My issue might be a lot simpler, but I'll let Benefactor.
I really don't. Usually it's fine. I usually like things to be around. I'm really fine. It's like 2 level difference at most. I'll be fine with 3. But for the most part, I didn't really have anything thought of for if that happens realistically. That's actually a very good question. So I don't really have a long-winded answer of that. To me, it is how it is. There's going to be those gaps that happen. I never really put thought on what to do when a gap gets really large between all the players. Even Scion, we had somebody, I think was 8, someone was 9, someone was 11, which is a 3 gap. And then we had another player out of the 4, I think was either 9 or 10. So everybody was in a general field of range for them. And then it also didn't help because he was dying. So I always set people new characters about 3 behind the highest level person to begin with. So I never really had a major issue or problem. So that's kind of a hard question to.
It never came up as a balancing issue for combat or.
No, my issue with the comp, because I couldn't really tell, because my issue for combat really came down to just them not cooperating with each other to actually effectively work together to deal with combat. I never really felt like level difference was the problem in that.
Okay.
So, just to give an example, which you especially know, I'm grappled and restrained. Can I get someone help here? No, no. I'll just do it myself. Kill the creature. Things like that, where it's just there was times where it's just no one would really help each other when someone was in danger, and that really matters in the flow of combat of getting people out of sticky situations, so you have that person's full attention and power and assistance. And so if there was any issue with level difference, I would never be able to tell because it was so many other things that contributed more heavily than level that I wouldn't know.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say my answer to that is very simple. I don't do anything with it. I don't care. I take on the approach of shape up or get wrecked.
And it never caused any problems at the table?
Not to my knowledge, no. I've had players have used it as a rib and as a jab at each other. Benefactor here, he has been one of the targets of such jabs because he actually, accomplishes goals. He actually gains XP efficiently. Okay, him and my brother, they're very good at gaining XP, where other people aren't. And when they're falling behind and Benefactor will question them and say, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? They start coming up with excuses and explanations. Well, I'm only level 4 or I'm only level 5. And Benefactor here will be scratching his head. Well, wait a minute. I'm level 8. What have you been doing wrong? And we started the game at the same level, and I have taken such a lead. It's not like you missed a session. I have taken such a lead on you. What are you doing wrong? And some players will answer honestly, like, I don't know. And that's fine. But that's also like my method as a DM. The reason why I show the XP is so that you can see what you did as well as what other people are doing and work with that. Like you have a guide rail to follow.
Okay. It's a common thing that I see where it becomes difficult to balance certain things when players start to get too far from each other in levels.
When we get to the final area here, I'm going to address something, and I want to say I'm going to torpedo your philosophy, but it's going to be something for you to think about with your approach as a dungeon master. So there's something I really want to say when we get to it.
Okay.
All right, so we're gonna go to skill increments here, or skills. All right, I cap it at 500. Quest goals. So when you do something that's like helping proceed a quest, that will exceed, or that can exceed, the 500 marker. So some of my players, they'll get like 800 XP. They might get 1,000 XP for skills. But generally, these are very simple. Skill checks versus DC. Help actions, are they helping other players? Again, I like to encourage team play. And then I add a combo multiplier. So that medic who kept doing spot checks, I've had several games where that's all this guy did. I had the one player who did listen checks. Just I do listen. I listen. I roll for listen. You're not helping anyone if you just spam the same thing. So how I do it is, for my XP gains, I do a combo multiplier. So first skill is 10. Second skill is 15. Third skill is 20. Fourth skill is 25. And as you begin to do these, all right, if you just do listen, you're going to be stuck at 10 XP. Okay, you get 10 XP. You get 10 XP. You get 10 XP. And I'm going to consolidate that 10 XP. So you did 4 listens, that's 10 XP. Right? Like 10 times 4, that's what you're getting. You're just getting 10. You're not doing anything. You're not helping anyone. You're not giving anyone any information. It's just a 10. All right. Now, if you do a spot and then you do a listen, okay, now you're getting a 10. And because you're doing 2 things on one turn, it's going to give you a ×2 multiplier on it. So now that 10 and 10, that's now a 40. You just jumped up. You did a 40 in 2 actions, 40 XP. And then your next turn, you decide you're going to dash, you're going to run, and then you're going to do a jump. Well, in the system that I'm using right now, a jump is a jump check. But you could even take this 5e, you could do an athletics. Regardless, okay, you're now doing a skill check. And you're comboing that with another ability or another action. So again, ×2 multiplier. Now, if you start adding in context of, okay, you're now helping another player, or another player is helping you, or you're doing it as a part of an achievement, well, now you start adding the multiplier of a ×3 or a ×4, and you're going to rapidly climb in XP. So I want my players to daisy chain their actions. And that's part of what I said before about my criticisms of 5e, is that it encourages dumb player behavior, where 3.5 encourages, in my opinion, it encourages creative thinking. It encourages thinking outside the box and doing things that are beyond just push this button. You guys want to say anything on that? I know.
My mic is muted. Woo. Wow. Oh, sorry. I wanted to say, I'm glad you got this point, because my problem with the skill intimate thing is, for me personally, there's times where this was talking about, like, with the end time, where just like I had no use for skills, or had no reason to do any skills, and kind of just like, well, I'm not gonna get any XP with skills. Maybe I could do this without rolling skill check. This is something that E has also had noticed in one of his games, where I was trying to solve this puzzle. I didn't realize I needed to do a skill check to solve the puzzle. I was like legit using my brain to solve the problem or puzzle, and was like, no, this one actually required a skill check to get done. It's like, I feel that kind of punishes players that are much more, how do I say this nicely? Screw it. More, intellectual and more willing to problem solve outside of using a skill check to get it done.
Yeah, if you use your mind to solve a puzzle, I would probably count that as a skill check. I'd either count that as roleplay or skill check. If you maxed out on roleplay, I would channel that over to skill. If you maxed out on skill, I would channel that over to roleplay.
Like, there's times where I'm just like, I don't really need a skill check to do this. I can do this. Oh yeah, here it is. So.
And I do that like in my Star Wars game. Niraj is a great example of that. Like, he has real world knowledge of Star Wars, and he gets to pick and choose what would his character know versus what would he know out of game. Like, he's able to create a dividing line, and if he's not decided, like, he's like, I don't know how I feel if I want my character to know that or not, he'll throw it to me and he'll let me decide. He'll say, like, can I do a roll or something? And it's like, all right, sure, do a roll. This is the roll it would be. Then he rolls, and it's like, okay, you don't or you do.
Yeah. I was curious. That was something I kind of. That's why I don't use the skill one, because there's times where I'm gonna have a player that will not use a skill. They'll either figure it out, or maybe they'll put it in a way where they'll do it without really needing to do the skill check in their own manner. Where it's like, that's a good point and good way to figure out how to do this. Okay, there's no real skill for that. I got you. And they still complete the task. So that's why I just didn't use the skill one when doing it. I just took it to predominantly combat and role play, and kind of mix a bit of the skill thing with role play.
Yeah. So here goes the part that I was saying that I might put Eve a little bit on blast, just a little bit. So my metrics here. Let me go through this. All right, these are the good side. The red here is the good. This is what I call metagaming. Okay, usually metagaming gets some bad connotations, but there is some good metagaming. Okay, it does exist. This is something I've learned too. I used to think there's only bad metagaming experience. I used to have it just as a pure penalty. This is to tell players you are doing something wrong, very wrong. So categories I have is teaching other players. That's a good thing. You're helping other players. Like, hey, it's here on your character sheet. Hey, this is how you're supposed to set your character up sheet. Or, hey, it's on page 135 of the book. This is good. This is like teaching players, oh, here's how critical hit works. Okay, here's how your feat works. So that stuff, I like that. I like when my players do that. If a player can field a stupid question for me, I appreciate that as a dungeon master. If someone says, where's my base attack bonus? I can't find it. Where is it? To me, every player should know where their base attack bonus is. If you have to ask me, the DM, and you're level 8, we got a problem. Like, I should not have to answer that question, and you're level 8. You should already know where your base attack bonus is at level 8. So if a player does that for me, it's like, excellent, fantastic. They're helping each other. I'm good. I'm happy. Helping other players, evident, that's here. So if someone says something like, no, that didn't happen, or I don't recall that happening, that wasn't right, the other player says, no, that did happen. Your character was there. Remember, your character said this, that, and the other thing, and that's what led us up to this. And they're like, oh, okay, I forgot, or I don't remember that. Okay, I might constitute that as, hey, that's that player trying to help, and they're doing something that I don't have to do, and they're not breaking character. I might give them XP for that. Then there's constructive criticism. That's where you have a player, Benefactor here has done that several times, where someone doesn't know how to play their character, and he will sit down with them on an off day, not even on a session. He'll sit down with them after game or sometime during the week, and he'll work with them. And if I see like, hey, there's some good potential here, there's some good behavior here, I'll encourage that. I'll give them XP for that. Then there's the DM discretion. This is the yellow zone. This can go either way. I can reward it. I can punish it, whatever I want. That's my prerogative as a DM. Then there's the bad XP, using out of character knowledge. So your characters begin splurting off all kinds of information about Darth Vader that your character would have no way of knowing about Darth Vader, but somehow your character does because you want your character to know it. You're going to have a punishment there. Like, you didn't tell me, the DM, at any point you had experience with Darth Vader. You didn't tell me at any point you had any education about Darth Vader. You're just pulling this out of your ass because you feel that it's important to know, and you feel that you want your character to know this because you think it would be cool, and you didn't tell anyone about this. You just sprung it up out of your ass. Benefactor and I both know of a player who has suffered from this type of out of character knowledge, and I'm going to leave it at that. Now here's the one where I'm going to put Benefactor on blast a little bit for antagonizing other players. Okay, if you have a player who's at the table and they're throwing a hissy fit, they're screaming at other players, etc. I have done this myself in Benefactor's game. I would dock XP for that. You would lose XP if you're harassing other players in a belligerent way. If I feel that way, like there's a fine line as a dungeon master. This is where your discretion and your experience has to come in. You have to let the players argue with each other, but when it comes to them harassing and antagonizing and going after each other, that is probably where I'll draw a line and saying, okay, I'm going to let you do it. I'm not going to interrupt you, but they get the point or they don't, and you're just beating a dead horse. So at this point now, you're just being an asshole for the sake of being an asshole, and I'm going to dock XP for that. I'm going to take away your XP for that.
Listen, when you lived through what I lived through, then come talk to me. All right.
Look. As painful as it was for me to punish you for that, okay? For me punishing you for that, you came out a better player, because now you've taken a very, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to do my own thing attitude. And you're no longer worried about fucking and yelling at other players. You're like, you know what? Not worth my time. I'm just going to move on. They're going to be with me or they're not.
Listen, that was more to me just tired of getting aneurysm than the XP thing. I made the point. I don't care that much. I've seen times where I've gotten like negative metagaming, and it's like, oh, okay, that I don't put too much focus on it. I got tired of the constant aneurysm. So, yes. But I'm even though in real life, I am not against like going and being like, you really just do something that asinine, that you really just like, I don't care. Like, is that because it to me is, especially if you do something that hinders the rest of the party, it's just gonna be something that I'm gonna be annoyed with.
Yeah, and that's it with me. It's like in real life, I don't have a problem, telling someone, hey, you're being a dumbass or you're being stupid. Like, I don't have that problem.
And then that goes to the next thing that this is really annoying is whining at the GM or annoying the DM. Okay, like either one of those are something that can set me off. And benefactor, you have had firsthand experience of people criticizing and whining at me. So I'm not like an authoritarian fascist over here, where with Volskargel, okay, you guys had plenty of reason to scream, piss, and moan and yell at me over that fight. All right. And I could have said, like, no, you guys are being unreasonable and et cetera. I could have had a bug up my ass about that. But I was like, no, they have some valid criticism. They had like all of their points are valid. So I'm going to take that and adjust. I'm going to reassess and recalculate how I'm doing this because they're right. You know, it wasn't me saying, oh, well, these guys are just trying to boss me around as a DM and I can't tolerate that. I got to show these players who's boss. I didn't take that approach. Okay. Whereas if a player decides they're going to try telling me how I should be a dungeon master, telling me, not like, hey, have you thought about this? Or have you tried this method? Okay. Or have you heard of someone doing this? Or what do you think about that? Like, that's all creativity. That's constructive. That's a conversation. They're not demanding me. They're not sending me an order. I put my foot down with whining, you know, and I've taken a lot of abuse, verbal abuse from my brother and my DMing style. And I take it on the chin. I don't take it personally. It's like, okay, he's criticizing the DM. He's not criticizing me as a person. And that's where I was going to go with Eve when we were talking about it earlier. As a DM, I am not afraid to tell the players, you screwed up. I'm not afraid to tell them you did this wrong or whatever have you. Okay. I'm not afraid. So like you were saying earlier, well, it's not fair to take away their XP. It's not fair to, or it's really hurtful or harmful. I'm not afraid of hurting my players. I'm not, if you don't like my game, you can leave. You know, that's how I approach it. You know, I'm not here to kiss their ass. I'm here to say, this is how I'm running my game. And these are the rules. You agree to this when you come to my table. And
well, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with your personal playstyle. I'm just saying that I'm not comfortable with that doing myself.
Yes.
I'm not comfortable saying that, hey, I'm going to have this creature in this game that could potentially make things unfun for you. That's not what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And that's also like that's something that it's great to hear you say, because that's something that like I feel a lot of players or DMs are afraid to just say. You know, it's like I'm not comfortable. I was telling that about Lady Potato, and when she started DMing, all right, her question to me is like, do you have any advice? Like, and you know, my advice, like after our first session, I told her, like, you need to be able to put your foot down. Like you're too much, you're too nice, you're too concerned and caring for other people, and that's a good thing to have. It's how you got all these players together, okay? But they're looking at you as their friend and their buddy, and they're not looking at you as the storytelling dungeon master who's running them through a gauntlet. All right, they're looking at it as like, oh well, hey DM, you can let this slide, right? Like come on, like it's a little thing, right? And they shouldn't be looking at it that way. They should be looking at you as there's someone you can talk to, and if they have a question, you can answer it. You're here to answer their questions, but you're not there to fudge roles for them. You're not there to help them win in the terms of, here, I'm going to have a god enter the battlefield and smite your foes for you. I don't know if you know that. I was in a game where that's literally what a DM did for a player. So, you know, that's something that, you know, I haven't been in one of your games, Eve, so I don't know how, like, what your Iron Fist looks like, you know. And
well, Benefactor has been, he could, I guess,
sure,
with that. He's been in multiple of them across the years and seen my, I guess you could say, DM journey. Because I haven't always been the same. Sometimes I have been more lenient in my earlier days.
Yeah. Well, you learned to pick and choose your fights,
Yeah.
That's a part of, this is the part of the dungeon master experience that I don't hear people talking about, and which again is part of why I want to do this streaming thing that we're doing, is because it's these little gritty details that I don't hear people talk about. I hear people giving out like these pussified responses of like, well, sometimes you're just not compatible with the players at the table. Well, that doesn't tell me anything. Like I get you're incompatible with people, but like, what do? You're in the moment. And to me, it's like, well, here's a very simple, like there's simple guidelines, simple rules that you can follow. And I want to encourage people to critically think about these things. Think about like, all right, you have a belligerent player at your table who's just completely unreasonable. Now, he might not be loud and screaming about it, but he could be polite as can be, but he's still being belligerent and he's still being unreasonable. So what do? Do you just continue this politeness of, oh, well, let's move on. Let's agree to disagree. And he's like, I don't want to move on. This is important. This is critical to my character, how this goes. And now you have gridlock with your game because you have a player who you can't just iron fist them and say, I'm ruling as no. Get the fuck out.
My experience with Eve is he gives you the look. Before he explains things, he gives you a look. He listens to see it hit as stupid as that goes. This is my personal experience. Not like with me personally, but with watching it with other people. He waits, listening to hear the stupidity that's going to come out your mouth, and then he'll sit there, kind of lean forward over, and then literally go and this is why I respect, which we both have done the same things. We go and look and like go through the course of their gaming and be like, this is what you did. What did you think was gonna happen? This. What you think was gonna happen? That. For me with him when it comes to things like that, he'll literally sometimes he'll just let someone else take over. Like if I'm there, I'll take over because sometimes I can't even stand some of the things I've heard.
I see where you get it from.
So
I'm never going to forget. Show them what you got, or I got to show you something. All right, cover your mouths. Okay, I'm going to take the bandage off and show them my blood. Like, what? And it's like, you guys have to make a fortitude save. And it's like, what? And then you're like, what did you think would happen? Like, what did you think would happen?
See, for me, it was like a lot of times players don't understand the various choices that they make over the course of the campaign. And it's my job to remember at least the majority of them in the various decisions. So when they do certain things or say certain things, I'm like, so you forget what you've done. Let me refresh your memory. Let me remind you about the choices and the decisions that you made. Now tell me what I should have done different in your regard. Sometimes I'm like, have them put themselves in my shoes. Like, what would you have done in my shoes? Most people can't even give me an answer in that regard. Most people can't really sit there and look introspectively and it's like, well, maybe you should have punished me. I'm like, it's like, no, you did particular things, and these are your repercussions of your actions. Not everything that you do was right, and depending on certain arguments, I'll take an even more direct approach, and I'll try to find the fallacy in their logic and use that to further prove my point.
Luke says, so for example, this is going back to skill checks. So for example, when I play my character Maru, I am generally an info gatherer. So I use my drones to gather info and really and relay it. He says really, but he means relay it to my team to get them around safely. Correct. That's a skill set. I would contribute that as either combat effectiveness, I would attribute that as role play, or I would attribute that as skill. One of those three categories is what I'd consider that.
But I must say the metagaming, at least with the bonuses, the good metagaming, that definitely had to be new because I never got any good metagaming XP in the 5e campaign. So that had to be something much more recent towards the end of the 5e game.
Yeah.
I don't. That is really new. I forget which game I introduced. No. It was in the End Times campaign. I did award positive meta XP.
I never got it. I taught other players. I helped other players and gave constructive criticism.
Yep.
I'm looking back on that XP, boy. I don't see it. I'm just putting it out there. I don't see it. I went back to January 10th of 2021. I don't see it.
Who's on blast now?
Wait, are you actually going through the log?
Yes, I'm going through the log.
Who's on blast now?
I don't see it.
Oh, I'm caught in 4K. Damn it. I'm canceled. I'm caught in 4K. I'm a liar.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Ugh.
So anything you
I can go through times where I should have gotten anything with Dawn, with Sylvanas. I'm like, hold on, wait, there has to be something a little recent award around the end of the 5e campaign because I ain't getting any of that. Hold up.
So, on that note, is there anything else you guys want to talk about or turning in regards to metagaming and how I do this XP here? Anything you guys want to address about that question?
What do you define as good metagaming? Because I'm still foreign to the concept of metagaming being good in any regard.
Okay, so as I said before, like teaching a player. So if someone said, what are the rules for starships? Like for starship piloting, right? And I am currently helping another player with loot. All right. Another player steps in and they say, oh, that's on page 235 of the book. And they're like, which book? Oh, it's the PHB. Here it is. And then they tell you like, all right, I'm here. It's this page on the PDF, 265 on the PDF. Go there. Player starts reading it. And then you start listening to that player explain what the rules are. Okay. They say, yeah, it says right here. It's, pilot check DC. If you're going, what speed, blah, blah, blah. They start going through those rules. All right. That to me is positive metagaming XP. That to me, because they're helping a player out of game. Here's what you need to do for whatever it is you're about to do. Now, I know a lot of people look at metagaming as using out of game knowledge, like, oh, that's a black pudding, and I know how to beat black pudding because I read the book and blah, blah, blah. That is, to me, that's why I mark it down as using out-of-character knowledge, okay? Or the other example is, hey, Eve, I heard you and Benefactor were having a conversation about my plans to overthrow the kingdom. And it's like, you weren't there, Jack, so how do you know anything about that? And we out of game know I have no sort of spy drones. I'm a barbarian. So I don't have like any magical tricks up my sleeve. Like I'm not talking to anyone. I just know this information. That's very clearly metagaming. That's bad metagaming. So did I do a good job drawing a distinction there?
Yes and no. Because I just don't feel like any type of metagaming is good metagaming. I guess it's just a me personal thing.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm like, anything that you could potentially metagame, I feel like you could do in character. So it's like, why would you resort to metagaming when you could just play the character? So
perhaps metagaming.
Because I'm like, if it's something that you're confused about, you can always ask the DM to clarify something.
That's why I use the example of I'm busy doing something else. So I'm busy. Someone else does something for me. Okay? Technically, it's the dungeon master's job to respond to something like that, technically. But if I'm busy helping another player and I'm trying to keep things smooth and keeping things running, and another player steps in, they step up, like say it's another, typically it's it's another dungeon master who does it. But if someone steps up to the plate and they're offering help, they're offering advice, they're offering guidance to another player, they're doing what a dungeon master should be doing. And they're doing it
and it keeps the game flowing smoothly, I'm okay with it. It's like, yeah, you're helping me out. I'm basically deputizing you. Okay.
Okay, but I guess I get that, but I still don't consider that metagaming. So I guess
Sure. Yeah, I could see it. Like I said, I don't hand it out often. Metagaming more often than not is bad XP. More often than not. But there are circumstances where I'm like, okay, kind of metagaming. I'm gonna. It could also be strategy, combat strategy. That could be a part of metagaming. And if players are strategizing in and out of game or out of game, I'm okay with that. I've actually had some encounters where I've told the players, look, stop the role playing, pause the game, have an out of character conversation. What do you want to do? What plan do you want to implement for this boss fight? And then when we resume the game, tell each other out of game what you're going to do. And think about it strategically, how you're going to tell the other players what you're going to do. So you're not just blatantly telling the enemy what you're going to do. And in some circumstances, you might not care if the enemy hears you because the enemy's non-sentient. It could be a blob and it doesn't care what you're going to do. It doesn't know what you're going to do. It doesn't think about tactics. So those are instances where there can be positive metagaming, in my opinion.
the reason why I wouldn't consider that metagaming is because in order for them to come out with a plan, they have to use knowledge that they already know. They can't infer things about an enemy that they don't know unless they're actively using knowledge that they don't know. Then that's metagaming, and I don't think that's good. If you go, hey, this fight, pause, figure out a strategy that you want to come in the fight, and they're using the knowledge that they know about the fight to try to come up with a strategy. To me, that's not metagaming. Metagaming to me was like, all right, figure out this fight. They go, well, I know goblins are, but they've never had interactions with goblin. How would they know that? Or this particular enemy has this weakness. How would they know that?
But that's
So,
a slippery slope.
So I wouldn't consider what you mentioned before as metagaming, because if they're making a strategy outside of character based off the knowledge that they have in character, that's not metagaming. They're just trying to figure out a solution to whatever.
But see, I still take that, like I said, like the example you just gave with the goblin, that if I didn't introduce a goblin to them, how do I know as a DM their character hasn't met a goblin before or even fought a goblin before?
But that's something that you would discuss with the players. That's all once then communication. It's like if you live in a land where goblins don't exist, or your backstory come from a mountainous region where they don't have goblins. How would you ever encounter one?
Let me give Benefactor's character here, for example. Okay, when he got introduced to the End Times campaign, okay, he is just some guy who's wandering around looking for elves. All right, he's combing the wastelands for elves to save them, to rescue them. All right, his experience up to this point, I have no idea. I don't know, in his travels, in his adventures of the wasteland, has he encountered goblins? Has he encountered humans? I don't know. Okay, I leave that to the player's interpretation. If the player wants to have that knowledge, if the player wants to be terrified, or if they want to be calm and be like, oh yeah, I know about these things, I leave that to their interpretation if they want to have that insight. Now, it could be that I homebrew almost all of my creatures, that I don't care. That could be probably a major factor, because it's like, all right, you look at the textbook and the textbook says they have this, that, and the other thing. And when you encounter mine, he has none of those things. That could be a key reason why I don't care.
But can I interrupt for a quick second?
Sure.
Because before you had made a statement about Darth Vader, and it was like, how would they have ever known about them? But what you're saying now is that you leave it up to them to interpret. How do you know that they didn't somehow encounter Darth Vader at one point? How do you know that they didn't read a book about Darth Vader, if you leave it up to them to interpret their experiences?
That is a fair point. I'll give you that. That is a fair point. With something notable like that, like a Darth Vader, that I would call for a specific thing. Whereas, have you encountered goblins before? That is such a broad net. There's a distinction there in a specific person versus a entire species that is abundant in this world.
Well, you have to establish that as abundant. What if in this world that they're not abundant? The goblin was just an example. The
Yeah,
point
yeah.
is using whatever outside knowledge that they should not possess is
Yeah.
the key factor. If they
If you encounter Darth Vader and you're like, I know he has Force grip. Okay, I know he can choke people with Force grip. I know he can do Force lightning, right? That's metagaming. Now, if I'm throwing personally, if I am throwing Darth Vader at the party and they know these things out of game about Darth Vader, I am okay with them using that knowledge because I'm fully throwing Darth Vader at them, allowing them to know that this established character has the things that they know him to have and maybe other things that they don't know he has. And I want them to act accordingly. So if they have metagame knowledge or if they want to metagame, I give them that opportunity where it's like, all right, you guys know Darth Vader has a lightsaber.
Okay,
Out of game, you know that. I should say out of game, you know that.
Yeah.
In game, you can role play your character not knowing that. Or you can role play your character knowing that and being like, I'm going to stay safe. Or you could play your character not knowing it, but the character still says, I'm not going to go close to close with whatever that thing is because it looks like a machine. And if it's a machine, it could probably crush me like a piece of paper. You know, so to me, there's different tactics and things to maneuver. But to directly answer your question, okay, how do I know? It's circumstantial. That's the best answer I can give you. It's circumstantial. If they mention something specific like Darth Vader or my character has come across goblins before, or if I feel it's reasonable, like I said with Tamias, if he told me he encountered goblins, no problem. If he had said I had never seen an Ittercap before, I'd believe it. He would ask me. He might even ask me, have I ever seen this thing before? And I might give the answer of yes, no, or I don't know. Would you have? And the player might you never know what the player's response to that could be. The player could say, I feel they wouldn't, or I feel they would. My brother has given me that answer several times where I feel he wouldn't know anything about this. I mean, my brother's character in Star Wars has a great slogan or a tagline. He said, what the hell is a Darth Vader? Because his character has never met Darth Vader. His character doesn't know it, not met. He doesn't know anything about Darth Vader. He's never read any of the propaganda, nothing. So, you know, that's a great character moment for him to decide my character knows nothing of Darth Vader. Nothing. So, you know, like I said, there's a degree there that, there's a balance you got to work with.
Well, there's where me and you differ. The example that you gave before, that you would allow them to use outside knowledge even though they don't have it in knowledge, is where we differ. I would not do that. That's bad metagaming for me. I don't consider that good metagaming. I will say if you're coming up with a strategy of any kind, you should only be making a strategy with the knowledge that your characters have acquired, or what they would know. You can make inferred guesses, you can make assumptions, but you should not be using any knowledge that your character doesn't know to formulate a strategy for your character to use. That's just my take on it.
Yeah.
So if a person tries to do that in my game, I call them. I was like, you don't know that. You can't tell other people that. Because I will allow them to strategize to make whatever strategy that they want. Same thing. We can have a whole pause. Where we pause combat. And you guys can sit aside and discuss how you want to tackle this problem. But you can only discuss how you're going to tackle the problem with the information that you've gathered or acquired, whether via checks, information that you gathered through talking to other people, stuff that you found in the area. This perfect fight in my Starfinder campaign, they have a species specialist on their ship where they can ask them to analyze species that they encounter to give them information so they can better know how to deal with various species that they might encounter in the in the campaign. But if they had, let's say, the monster manual or whatever, and they had knowledge of what these monsters were on beforehand, I wouldn't allow them to be like, well, I know what that creature is. I know exactly how to deal with that. I wouldn't allow that.
Yeah, and I think that's just etiquette. You don't have the monster manual out at the table.
Even if you memorized it, it doesn't matter. Even if you committed it to memory, perfect memory and all, I still wouldn't allow it. You can only use the information that you have gathered through the campaign to formulate a strategy. I shouldn't be like, well, I know Darth Vader in real life. I know he has these abilities, so let's plan to have the abilities. And my character's like, well, I don't know who the fuck Darth Vader is. Excuse my language.
Yeah. Well, no, that's probably a good example of it. And I wouldn't begrudge a DM having your stance on that. It's just my style of how I do encounters. Like if you're fighting Darth Vader, that's either a boss encounter or it's a you gonna get fucked encounter.
Yeah.
I
get you. That's what I said. Me personally, I wouldn't do it. That's why when you was like there's positive metagaming thing, my brain is like nani, because I'm just like it doesn't connect, it doesn't click.
Does not compute.
Like it's like I because I've never experienced a positive metagame moment. If you're metagaming, you're using knowledge that you should not have. Hard stop. And I'm like, you shouldn't. That's the way my brain functions in that regard. No, I'm not like super punishing for. I'm like I just be like, hey, you wouldn't know that, or you can't do that. But I would give opportunities for players to learn information. There are ways that they can gather information on people, subjects. Like in current one, there's a whole dossier that they sometimes get forwarded about particular part. Now the dossier doesn't have every single thing about the person, but it has some bullet points and some things that they have. If they want to do further research on their own to try to figure out what else that person might do, that's solely up to them. If they just want to use the dossier, that's it, and that's all they get from it. That's also their decision. But if they had information, outside of that they didn't gather themselves, I was like, sorry, you can't use that. You wouldn't know this information that you never took the time to get.
Yeah, and to me, how I factor that into a circumstance is I put that into their roles. That's how I do it.
Okay.
So if the player is like, oh, it's Darth Vader, he's got a red lightsaber, I know he has a backup lightsaber, I know he has his utility belt, which he uses for breathing, so all we got to do is hit him with some ion damage, and that'll fuck him over. Okay. Make your roll. And they don't know that, okay, you just added 6 or 8 penalty to your roll. I'm not going to tell them. And because if they're going to pull that knowledge out of their ass, I'm going to pull my own DM tricks out of my ass to compensate for their stupidity. Because there's a degree of difficulty. And if you're going to breach that degree of difficulty by just circumventing the reality of the entire circumstance, then okay, I'm going to adjust the difficulty to what it's supposed to be, given that you just gave yourself these added bonuses of things that are nowhere involved in any of this. So it's like, all right, you're going to give yourself bonuses and buffs. I'm going to buff the encounter to compensate for these buffs that you just pulled out of your ass. If that seems fair, it's probably not. I don't care. As a DM, you come to my table. I'm going to run through this real quick. This is Cypher's method. All right. This top one here is my method. So I'll go through like a typical Cypher first, and then I'll go to my method. Cypher method is someone does a great role play. You're like 1 XP. They do great storytelling. They're going through this elaborate articulation. My character's wearing this nice flowing robe. It has little frills underneath the arms. It's got this like upped collar that has like these special like eagles embroidered into the shoulder pads. Like they're going through all this detail, and then they're going through like this really articulated, hey, I'm going to take this man's hand and look him in the eye, very troubled, worried in my expression as I say, I have a son too, and I feel your pain. Whoever did this to you, I will bring them to justice. Like the player's going through that much detail, that much articulation. 1 XP. Someone rolls a nat 1. I've already said this. I said this last stream, I think. Someone rolls a nat 1. They get an XP, but they can also give someone else. They have to give another player 1 XP. So they get to choose. Then they automatically get one themselves, but they choose another player. They can do it random. They can do whatever. Give another person XP. And then if they do some great action, like they do something that's really cool, they're like, hey, DM, I'm going to spend an XP to
make an explosive, an improvised explosive, and I'm going to blow up this this building. And then they roll, they succeed, and the building is just this crescendo. Like the DM says, you explain what it looks like, and then you explain it's this awesome crescendo of fireworks and things like that, and debris is flying off, and the ground is shaking, and people hear ringing in their ear. You could say, all right, that was awesome action. You painted a really cool action scene, 1 XP. And then someone also moving the story forward. This typically, if you follow this method, you get about 4 XP per session, per player. Each player gets about 4 XP. Sometimes you'll get a little more. I don't really think, I can't think of any moment where someone got less than 4. There are probably examples of people getting less. In my first few sessions of Cypher, I gave people like maybe 2 XP, and it was very little. Like it's not enough to really progress in the game. So I came up with my method, which combined with the default Cypher method, you get a little more than 4, but the gist of it here is you give 1 XP at the start of the game. You give 1 XP after you go to lunch. So I like to have a scheduled lunch break in the center of my games. So you take a lunch break. When you come back from lunch, everyone gets 1 XP. Or at the start of the lunch, I'll say everyone gets 1 XP. Go get your food and do whatever you're going to do. And then at the end of the game, it's usually awesome because there's like a cliffhanger. I love giving XP at the end of games because it gets people like, all right, all my work paid off. I got something. So 1 XP at the end of the game. If someone shows up early, if I have like, hey, the game's at 1 o'clock and I get people showing up at 1:30, 2 o'clock, it's like, okay, I want you guys to show up on time. So I'm going to add an XP bonus if you show up at 12:50 or 12:55, etc. And then there's also, I also don't begrudge them the standard XP they gain from great role playing, great storytelling, GM intrusions, great action, and moving the story forward. I don't begrudge them that. The one thing I did change is with GM intrusions, I made it so you only get 1 XP and you don't get to gift someone else XP. That was the one thing I changed. And when I pick up Cypher again, I'm not going to change, or I'm going to change it back to this where you give someone else XP. But there, I wanted to share that.
Okay.
Well,
All right.
It's not as extensive as how you break it down, but I pretty much do the same thing.
What would you basically do the Cypher system here?
No, I'm talking about the
No,
the experience, how you break down
Okay, all right.
the experience. I should have clarified. No,
Yeah, I was like,
in terms of how we divvy out experiences, relatively the same thing. I just don't break it down to show it to the players. Like it's just this is how much you get.
Yeah.
You know, so they don't know if it's from role play, is it from achievements, is it for whatever. You know, they just know that whatever they have accomplished, this is how much experience point they get.
Yeah, when I was doing 5e, I just did combat and role play. Like I said, for the one we're doing now, because I'm also testing it out right now, I'm just doing very base experience gains from combat instead of like doing the whole package. Now, if I was doing it like 5e, like once everything is settled, and if I say I redid it with the same system, then I would actually mix in how I did it with 5e. I would have liked to shown it, but we're kind of running a little bit close. I like to call it here as I also need to get some stuff done before dinner time. So take
All right.
stuff done. Yeah.
Well, we can wrap it up here. Any last thoughts you want to give, Eve?
When it comes to EXP, just focus on what works for you. Everyone has their own style and what they like and what they don't like. If it's easier for you to do milestone leveling, just understand that some people may not like that, and find a way to implement it that works not only for you but works also for your players. Like Benefactor said, setting the expectation for your players exponentially helps with deciding what type of XP system works for your table.
All right, Benefactor, anything you want to leave with?
If you have a level whore, I feel so sorry for you. But you're willing to sit down, talk to them, and be like, if you came here to just level up, I feel this might be the wrong game for you. But other than that, I can't add more to what he just said. He said what I would say, and that's the only thing I can add. You have a level war, I'm sorry for you. You need to talk to them and really sit down and be like, this game might not be for them.
All right. And I can't really add much more to it. My only other advice would be don't be afraid to talk about it. If you have trouble with XP, reach out. You can reach out to any of us, okay? Either in our comment section or whatever have you. Okay, reach out to us. We'll talk to you. We'll help you. All right? XP you shouldn't be afraid of. And if you're having any problems with it, you have a lot of resources and a lot of people who are willing to talk and help you with it. So thank you guys for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. Niraj, Luke, anyone in the future watching this, hopefully next week we'll see you. So
yeah. Oh, and next week's topic, I believe would be a great thing to talk about is define party roles or party composition roles that are generally understood within D&D. Give a quick example like blaster, controller, face, scout, those kind of things. I think
So
it'd be a
party
great
roles.
discussion. Yes.
Okay, that's a good topic. So we'll do party roles. I like that. All right. So have a good one, guys, and Godspeed.
Bye.